welcome to my welcome to my completely random Twitch streams that you can never predict. But that's what makes them fun, right? Who needs consistent streaming schedules or expectations? I think. It's up the MXL Gaming. The Major XL Gaming. Just making sure everything's running here. Stuff always looks weird. I think we're good. So I know we just had like a fairly... What was it, yesterday? Was it yesterday? No, it was the day before yesterday. Whenever we had it, we just had a fairly deep Twitch talk on my stream, whenever I streamed last. But today, yeah, because yesterday I played video games. But today, we're going to do something that I get a lot of requests for all the time, especially on TikTok, where I've been sharing the advice for these kinds of things. And that is, we're going to be breaking down and walking through how to build a show or plan a show for Twitch or streaming. Not just Twitch, YouTube, streaming, whatever. For those of you who are unfamiliar, just to catch you up here, some of my bigger pieces of advice when it comes to streaming and content planning and the like is that... Wow, my Streamlabs feed doesn't want to work. Thanks, Streamlabs. Or either I told it to ignore followers, which is possible. One of my biggest pieces of advice when it comes to growing your stream profile, streaming more successfully, building content that you can share on other platforms from your stream, is to build and plan a show around it instead of just firing up the old Twitch machine and saying, well, good luck, and just kind of game streaming until you get bored, and then, you know, rinsing and repeating, which is what a lot of streamers do. And while I understand the appeal of that, and if that's kind of what you're actually here for, go for it. Okay? That's completely fine. Sorry, I have to pull chat up in incognito to do what I want. There we go. But if your primary goal here is to actually grow like a following, and you want... Can I close some of these elements on this page? I'm sorry, I'm trying to load up chat so I can actually look at you on the camera here and still see chat. And the chat pop-out window wants to be really dumb. There we go. Now it should be big enough I can see. Like I said, if you just want your stream presence to be firing up OBS and playing your game all day for a few hours and then you're done, go for it. Just realize that most of the growth tips and growth advice will not apply to you. It's fine. It's fine, but you have to have that self-awareness. But if you want to grow a successful stream presence that turns into a business or a potential full-time gig or whatever, one of the most successful things you can do is plan and build a show around your stream that is something that can then be turned into a video. And when I wanted to get into streaming more a couple years ago, especially to do some of it on YouTube, that was my main objective with Streamer News, was I wanted a show that would be just as watchable as a VOD as it was the video. That way, I didn't have to make a video from it. I could just stream it to YouTube, put in some timestamps, and people watch it as a video. And that has been hugely successful. Now, I have had other streaming shows that I work on that are less watchable as a VOD on their own, but would be just as watchable with a little bit of editing down. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. And so the irony of me doing this stream to plan this is I'm actually doing this so that we together can plan my Twitch show that I'm watching, or launching rather, August-ish, I believe. And so we're going to be planning that together here. But first, I have to answer a question from Anthemic, who's asking about this wonderful, amazing purple SM7B windscreen. Not a pop filter, it's a windscreen. There's a difference. It is from this place. I believe this is the website. Hang on, I will pull it up and give you a direct link. It's from a store called The Reporter Store. They have customizable and like you can print stuff on it, windscreens and little flag boxes and things like that for all the microphones you could possibly imagine. But specifically, they have a category for the SM7B. I also got a nice blue windscreen for my MKH 416 shotgun mic that I use as well. All right, close that tab. We don't need that anymore. So what does actually building a show entail? Actually, let's before we get to how to build it, let's talk about the motivation. So I mentioned that I wanted a show that I could then flip into a YouTube video, because also, if you're unfamiliar or haven't heard my other, streaming advice or whatever, one of the big things that you want is you want to be making content on multiple platforms. If you are just streaming on Twitch, especially for game streaming, if you're just firing up your game and streaming on Twitch for X number of hours, a few days a week, and you're starting from no other, you don't have a YouTube channel with viewers, you don't have a following on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or anywhere else, if you don't have a following that you're pointing to Twitch, just firing up streaming and hoping that you get new viewers is kind of a losing game. Twitch has minimal discoverability. It is incredibly difficult without the right navigation of choosing specific games and hopping on trends before they start and all of that to really grow those viewers from zero, just game streaming alone. And any Twitch following that I have right now is the result of years and years of YouTube content pointing back to my Twitch. Now, it would be more successful if I actually leveraged Twitch more. A lot of people just either follow and never show up because I never stream, or, I don't plan streams. That's what we're doing today. But the issue is if you want to be a full-time streamer, you don't necessarily have the extra time, because if you're putting in, your time after you get home from work or school or weekends or nights, you don't necessarily have the time to like double or triple that to then go work on another platform to make that content. So you want your content to be as repackageable as possible for your viewers. And so that is kind of the big underlying motivating idea here that we are going to work on. And I'm actually going to point you to an article. Well, I guess it's an article. It's actually a free resource that we're going to talk about in a moment. That is kind of the, I guess you could say, like, source inspiration for all of this. But we'll get to that in just a second. We got 200 bits from Gimpaiji. Did not say that right. I am aware. So glad you're doing this. I'm a quadriplegic and use a mouse. Oh, so it is actually Gimpy. Like Gimpy. Okay. I was trying not to make it offensive. Actually, this monitor is much harder to read. I'm going to have to get a bigger monitor for my chat monitor. So I'm just going to read it off the front one here. Quadriplegic can use a mouse that follows my head movements. Unfortunately, I can't move enough to use two monitors. Interesting. That is a challenge. Is there a way to switch monitors by clicking on an icon? Gimpy, yeah. If not, what would you advise for single monitor streamers? And ask you on Twitter if you're more comfortable. We can talk about this a little bit here for a minute. I would say shoot me. Well, you can't shoot me a DM. Ping me on Twitter and I may DM you back to expand. So Windows itself does allow for virtual desktops. I don't use them since I am a multi-monitor person. So I don't like. They used to be a huge feature. They're not as like popular these days. I don't, but it is a new feature as of Windows 10, and they're amplifying it in Windows 11. I don't know if you can assign hotkeys to them, honestly. I'm pulling it up right now. What's it called? Toolbars. Task View now? Is that what it's called now? No, they have a whole virtual desktops thing. I don't have it enabled on my Windows, but they have a Windows D. That just minimizes my windows for me, but I assume if you have the virtual desktops enabled, that does it. So yes, I would assume there are system level hotkeys associated with the Windows key, also called the super key, that you can then navigate between virtual desktops, which will effectively be a second monitor. However, I don't know that you can desktop capture them, because the way that, like, if you're trying to capture multiple monitors at once or windows on another monitor, the way desktop capture works is it's capturing things that go, to your monitor physically out of the video signal through the graphics card. But if you're looking to keep, say, OBS and your Twitch dashboard or something like that on a virtual desktop and then switch back to one for your games or whatever you have pulled up on that monitor, that would work. Control, Windows, left, right. I just hit Shift. Yeah, I don't have them enabled, but looks like Music Done Digitally has the answer. That would be what I say. Otherwise, I know Gamecaster now has an overlay integrated into the Windows Xbox bar, which is Windows key plus G. And then you can also get just a native Twitch chat within the Windows G game overlay bar as well. You may have disabled it at some point because that's a recommendation for OBS streaming sometimes. But The Windows game bar actually has some integrations coming, and I think OBS integration is coming at some point, but mainly XSplit or Gamecaster is integrated in it right now. But you can get Twitch chat there. So if you want something to quickly just be able to easily reference Twitch chat, you can pull it up with that, and it may even stay over top of your game. I have a whole video I'm going to make on that specifically, but I believe you can even pin it to stay over top of your game. So that might help you. Are you still using the Go XLR, or did you swap to another interface? So for here, I'm using the Go XLR. It's the brains of my audio for my retro streaming setup. Currently, it's the brains for my desk streaming setup as well. You know, way over there. But I may be switching to my bigger mixer at some point in time. Okay, so getting back on topic a little bit here. In order to create a bunch of different content when your goal is primarily to stream, the most effective way to work and produce that content to then split up to other platforms and things like that is to create the content that you're streaming that can then be easily divided up into videos elsewhere. Now you have the low-hanging fruit of like highlights, which you can turn into a montage for YouTube or Twitter or whatever, or individual clips that you can then edit down to TikTok with sites like Streamladder, and there was one other that's been recommended to me, which can automatically do it. But then there's actually turning the content itself into new things. So there's this piece of content. I realize the irony here. That is not the split view I wanted to do. Here we go. There's a piece of content by a fellow by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk. He runs a big media industry as well as a wine company that talks all about business stuff. And he releases this free PDF called How to Make 64 Pieces of Content in a Day. Apparently you have to subscribe for it now. Download. It's right here. There we go. And I recommend giving this a view. This is a little bit just kind of on the extreme overkill absurd side, because they're literally, I mentioned this during my last stream, but they're literally putting out hundreds of videos like across every platform every minute of every day, and they have a whole media team behind it. But the core idea here is kind of the same of what he's doing, which is basically taking one big kind of content piece and breaking it up into little bits and pieces that you can sprinkle out to the other platforms and things like that. So that is the idea. And so you can do that through a few different ways, such as individual segments. So you have like, you know, mini segments of a bigger show, like would be during a game show or like your local TV news. And that you would then splice those off into individual videos or individual topics that you want to feature as individual pieces of content that can be shrunk down into shorter, you know, releases to fit in the Twitter 240-second limit, or onto Instagram or TikTok for 60 seconds or 30 seconds or what have you, as well as obviously the individual moments, but also things that you can expand to breakout videos. So I have taken certain topics that I have come up with here on live streams or in my streamer news show and cut together what I said about it during the stream and then recorded in a normal video recording some extra thoughts that I had to kind of wrap the video into its own piece of content that I can post to YouTube. It's a lot more efficient than re-recording the whole video or having that content just exist in a vacuum totally separate from what's here. Because frankly, whatever you stream live, if you're not splitting it up and posting it somewhere else, then it's going to just kind of disappear. Live content is the most fleeting of all content because theoretically, I mean, obviously, especially when it gets into like stream fails and stuff or live stream fails or whatever, like people will preserve your mistakes to embarrass you. But like overall, just because you said something during a live stream doesn't mean any large chunk of your viewers ever actually heard it, which is, I guess, depressing in a sense, but also just kind of how the world works. And so that's kind of the goal here. And as like I said, I'm thinking August is when we launch my Twitch show, as I will be swapping away from AFK chat, most likely. None of this is final, but this is the plan. And so I want to build this Twitch show that I can live stream on Twitch, capitalize on the viewership I have on Twitch, build more of that, because while I have been progressively building my 6,000 or so followers here, there's not as much as there should be. I could be much more successful, obviously, if I was actually using Twitch, because there's no point in having a Twitch following in a big account like this if I'm not using it. And I want to use it on top of the fact that, you know, the whole not keeping all of your eggs in one basket thing, like I'm I've become very YouTube dependent in recent years, or the past couple years, which I didn't used to be, and I want to get back to being more heavily present on some of these other platforms. AFK chat isn't going away entirely, but I will be reducing the frequency. Weekly was just, especially for that kind of show where I wanted to have something really serious to say about an individual product or a couple products, was a little tough to pull off every week, especially, while still making all of my other videos. So this show is going to be a little bit easier, because then by focusing on a show that I stream here on Twitch, I can leverage you all, and which sounds manipulative or something. It's not like I'm using you so much as I want to produce content here on Twitch catered more towards Twitch, for you all here, and deliver what you all actually want, and then be able to turn that into content for YouTube, so that my time is not wasted, so to speak, which is a weird way to put it and kind of a cynical way to put it, which isn't like how I like to talk about it. But, especially when it comes to me doing this full time as a business, the content that I produce here, if it doesn't end up back on YouTube, I'm not necessarily making a whole lot of money for it. It's not helping my YouTube channel growth, which is my big thing. So everything needs to feed back up to that, even if this is its own thing I'm trying to build on its own as well. Maddie with the 25 bits. This dude still streams here. You did start Twitch before YouTube. Nope. I started YouTube back in like 2006. Twitch/Justin TV wasn't around for quite a bit later. Kind of different channels along the way and stuff. It's possible this Twitch account was made before my YouTube channel, but it would have been a couple of days. It wouldn't have been like significant amount of time, because I came up with this name and made new channels for everything all at the same time. In 2012 was when I switched over from my Elite Speak Ted Demolisher name to EposVox, to be slightly more professional. So how do you build a show like this? Well, we're going to kind of plan this out and write this out here as I pull up Notion. By the way, if you haven't heard of Notion, Notion is a cool program that's like a combination of Excel, OneNote, Evernote, Google Keep, your notepad, a calendar, and database tools, as well as like Google Docs, where you have all the sharing and collaborative stuff all meshed together. And I've switched to it from Google Docs/OneNote to using it almost exclusively now, and I'm not even beginning to use all the features of it. It is an incredibly powerful tool. I'm just going to make a random new document here, new video. We're just going to call this Plan Twitch Show. I'm going to open this full. Can I zoom in on this program anymore? Can I improve the scaling? I don't want small text. I want big text. As my only complaint is there are certain aspects of it that aren't fully fleshed out yet. It is kind of new. All right, so I'm going to make a heading, and then I'm going to switch to this view. And then, OneNote is from Microsoft. OneNote's like the best program Microsoft's ever put out in the modern era. Obviously, Word is incredible and like whatever, but for a new thing, OneNote is one of their more powerful tools. But I ran into some limitations with it. All right, so I'm going to call this How to Plan Show, and then I'm going to switch to this. Let me know if this is too small. If so, I will find another view, because I can't make this text area any bigger right now. We may switch to a Google Doc just so... Yeah, we're going to switch to a Google Doc so I can make it a little bit more visible in the meantime. Docs.google. So I think this is really powerful, and why I wanted to go ahead and stream this right now, to walk you through it as I am planning it, because otherwise I have to make up a new show to stream and all of that, and it ends up being a little weird, because inherently I've discovered, when I'm making videos, not as much effort ends up coming out when I'm making up a use case versus using one, the production value and the results and my ability to explain it of certain subjects comes out much more strongly when I'm able to show you a real world example of how I'm doing something versus just kind of making up use cases and the like. Also, we will have a product to unbox today just to check out. That'll be coming in for review, and we'll probably make some physical changes to my setup as well to help facilitate this show. But I want to get into the actual meat and potatoes of what we're talking about here. So how to plan show. So I'm trying not to rip on Devin Nash here too much with this notepad-like view, but we are using Google Docs instead. That wasn't my objective today, but this is the easiest way to communicate like my thoughts here at the moment. So I don't have a name for this show yet. Nothing like that. The names aren't as important. A lot of people get caught up on that. They're like, if, you know, people, I may have to bring my chair over too. This stool is getting tiring. People who want to start a podcast or a comic book or whatever, you can tell when they, all right, yeah, this isn't going to work. You can tell when they aren't really like into the idea of doing the work of the thing itself, when they get stuck on the idea of what should it be called instead of actually doing the thing. Because you can kind of make that up as you go. AFK chat was just a random name choice. Streamer news was fairly on the nose. Thanks, Real Zenith. Appreciate it. Cujo! Alright, so. How to plan a show. First and foremost, of course, you need the biggest thing that you want to stream. Well, actually, first and foremost, you should, here, let's make a list. Let's do a numbered list. You can't do this in Notepad. Also, we can actually improve the scaling a little bit more. First and foremost, brainstorm content ideas. The actual, the tangible thing you want to stream. And you may find that the thing you end up actually making the core focus of the stream isn't necessarily the biggest thing you thought you had at first. So for example, the things that I stream as a creator in general, that's an easy way to start. We have gameplay for video games. Here on Twitch, a couple years ago before I had a kid, I did a lot of Apex streams and Halo streams and Call of Duty streams because I play a lot of first-person shooters and that tends to do well on Twitch, and so I was streaming it. I also want to stream unboxings. I don't really include those in videos anymore. It's a way to interact with you all, preview upcoming video content. I can show you stuff that I have coming in, and we can get a first look at some products. Some of them we can't test necessarily, but that's fine. I also stream Pokemon card openings. Now, I would honestly encourage you to not necessarily, it depends on how solid of an idea you have for your stream already. So let's start there. If you already have a pretty solid idea of like what you want your show to look like, you've thought about this a lot, you can probably skip this step or either briefly kind of be like, okay, I don't need this. But if you are completely clueless, I would go as open and like unrelated as possible. So obviously, unboxings, gameplay, and Pokemon card openings are very loosely or otherwise not at all related things because we have tech, gaming, and Pokemon. But that doesn't mean they can't turn into something, especially here on Twitch, or if you plan, you know, if you plan on streaming multiple times a week, you can have 2 different shows and just make sure that's clearly communicated in your stream schedule, things like that. So we've got unboxings, gameplay, Pokemon card openings, and of course we have the general umbrella of tech, which I will then make a, you know, tech education, which I will make a subcategory of its own. So we have tutorial stuff, review stuff. We have stream feedback, which is a show that I ran in video form called Stream Critique. That's coming back, by the way. You can head to this website. Hold on. It should be streamguides.gg/stream critique if you want to have your stream featured in a video / on stream and actually reviewed for tangible feedback on how to improve. So we have tutorials, reviews, stream feedback, stream critiques, general like setup advice. And then we have news, which I'm not writing in this particular list because we're feeding that back over to Streamer News, which is a show I'm already running. So worth keeping in mind there. John Quattro with the tier 1 sub. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I'm trying to think if I had anything else in mind. We could just do like general testing and tweaking. So this covers like in today's stream, I may move a monitor over and actually get it hooked up and usable, testing things out for the first time where I don't have a completely solid idea of what the answer to a question is or what I want to convey in a video. So it can be like practice or research for a video or a gadget that I just want to play with that I don't necessarily have the time to make a video on. These are the things I want to talk about. So these are my content ideas that we can cover in a show. Now, these aren't necessarily related, but then we can go from there and plan out what we think would actually be successful. Now, for this, you may need a little bit of experience streaming. So if you've never streamed before and you're kind of working through this, my recommendation would honestly be to go through each of this list, and here I can even write that down, and do some test content, be it videos, streams, whatever. And we talked about this on a previous, on the Discord community, the Discord stage channel we did yesterday. Go through, and even if you make content that no one sees, that you keep private, unlisted, or you just delete after you make it, go through and make content in these categories, both to figure out, whether or not you like it, whether or not you like the workflow. Also, see if it does well. If you make some videos, do some feeler videos for a couple months and see, what bites you get and things like that, and see what actually works for you. Because you may find that when you get in here, say, which happens a lot for gaming specifically, you may get in here and start streaming some gameplay, and you're like, well, crap, this actually wasn't very fun, or I was a little too distracted with the game to interact with chat, and I missed out on my first chatters, and that's not a good feeling at all. Or I was too distracted by chatters to actually focus on the game, and that didn't really work out as a game stream either. You may find these things out if you've never done this before. So step 2 would be test content live or offline. Grim Reaper Gaming, how'd you get the custom colored mic? It is just a colored windscreen. You can pick it up from Reporter Store. It ships from the UK, so if you're in the States, it'll take like a week to get to you, but fairly nice. And I needed a replacement anyway. Although mine already has a cat hair on it. But hey, that's all right. All right, so we've got, we might as well make this a command at some point. So if either of my mods are watching and they have access to, I believe it's Nightbot for this, boom, do it up. Otherwise, I'll try to remember at some point. So I'm gonna put this in parentheses because this isn't a necessary step, or is it one that will apply to everyone? But brainstorm. Sorry, I've got dead skin. Brainstorm. I won't say as many content ideas as you can, but kind of like make sure you hit all the heavy hitters of what you actually want to do. Like really think long and hard about what is it that you want to make and why. Evaluate why. So for certain things like gameplay, why do you want to make gameplay streams? Why do you want to stream it? Is it because everyone else does it? Does that mean that you actually want to do it? Is it because you consider that the default format of streaming like so many people do? Does that mean that's actually what you want to do? Do you enjoy gaming as your luxury kind of you time that you want to keep as entertainment or passive relaxation for you? If so, turning that into work may not be the right idea at all. So you have some stuff to work through there. And I want people to make sure that they are really going for the right idea for them. And that may not always be the case. However, look at these big things and decide like you could do things adjacent to it, or you could turn it into an aspect of your show. So then we prioritize your topics here. So prioritize. This means that you're going to take, and once you've either tested your content or building on the experience of what you already have done or made or have viewers for, then you decide what would be the most successful if you have the data or experience for that, or what you felt the most comfortable or the most effective or got the most enjoyment out of doing. So this is kind of different for me because I very much enjoyed game streaming, but I also felt that weird obligation where every time I played that I should be game streaming, which isn't what I always want to do. Sometimes I just want to play Apex with the boys, not stream Apex and perform for everyone else and not get to pay a close attention to the game. Secondarily, and here I'm going to write this down. Did you enjoy it the most? Secondarily, performance is an inclusion here. So for me, given my lengthier career and all of that, I'm at a bit of an advantage here. But I know I love you all so much, all of you stream viewers watching right now, and video people too. But my gaming content overall has been my least successful, like my straightforward, I'm going to make gaming content about this game for the sake of gaming. That kind of content has been my least successful and least worthwhile content I have produced throughout my entire career, from start when that was all I was doing, to my transition to tech, to even a year ago when I was streaming Apex on Twitch right now. I love you all, but you all show up to talk about tech, to talk about streaming, and to get interactivity regarding that, not to watch me play Apex. And especially when I'm rusty and don't get to play a ton, what's the point? That doesn't mean, as Cujo is spoiling and pointing out in chat, that doesn't mean you don't get to play games. So there's a couple ways you can do this here. So we're going to go ahead and add our performance. So I know from experience and from my data that gaming is not super, even if it's something I enjoy or something I want to do, it's not something that is super successful. So for me, even though I've tried it a few times, and that's how actually I got up to affiliate, but I was also secretly, actually, we'll get to that. So for me, it doesn't make sense really whatsoever to turn this Twitch channel or to make my stream content all about gameplay. Doesn't make sense. It's a hard ladder to climb. I'll never be like super big, in the scrolling of pages of people streaming. I have someone right behind me streaming Apex right now who will probably dominate me forever. That is Peach FPS, by the way. So overall, it just doesn't make sense for me to stream gameplay. That doesn't mean I don't get to utilize gameplay for my streams, though, or don't get to play games in the first place, of course, and doesn't mean that it can't be a part of my show. So we have prioritized here by my experience. You can figure out what you enjoyed the most, what you got the most community or interaction from, what opens up the most doors of opportunities for you. We talked during my last stream about figuring out your career goals and identifying the jobs around that and how reverse engineering your way up to getting that dream job. Which one of these gets you closest to that? So that is also gets closest to career goals. So we know from that tech education umbrella for sure is number one, and we could pick and choose here from these. Unboxings is inherently going to be related because that's number two. But I also enjoy gameplay, and I also enjoy my Pokemon card openings. So then we can start formatting our show based on this limited amount of information already. Like, we have barely scratched the surface, and from what I have listed right here, we can plan a show. So I'm not even going to add another point right now. We will come back to this, and we'll just call this heading 2. We'll call this Twitch Show of the Vox. So what will my show be about? Obviously, I've thought about this a little bit in advance in order to be able to explain this to you guys, but based on the basic logic that we have worked through here, we can figure this out. So it should be, we'll make just a bulleted list. It should be a tech show. So under that, we can then plan out, and you don't want to get caught up in too many of the tiny, like, in the weeds or granular details just yet, but we can start planning out some of those details. So it's a tech show, which means we're probably going to be in either just chatting, like we are now, or there's a science and technology category. I struggle with this even on YouTube because there's a tech and an education category. There's not an education category currently on Twitch. There's an educational tag, which I have used for this stream for the first time because I didn't know that existed. But there's not an educational category. But you can pick out your category based on what your primary content piece is going to be. And obviously, if you're on YouTube, category doesn't matter a whole lot here. And I think I had someone asking if, sorry, John Quattro, can you apply this idea to VOD content too? 100%. So actually, we're going to wrap around to why that matters in just a minute, actually. So don't let me forget this. Ping me if I don't come back to this in about 5 minutes. Obviously, on YouTube, category doesn't matter, but treat the category as the general idea or theme of the show. So we can fit in just chatting or science and technology. Science and technology is probably good. Well, Cujo's pointing it. I was literally reading that as I was saying that. Probably good because of the low viewership and for my granular tech testing. Like if I'm doing some really nerdy testing of a product, that would fall under science and technology. But the more Q&A kind of interactivity parts would make more sense than just chatting. And so I could either just dominate science and technology. Please, Cujo, do not show up because you're making my life easier, actually. We could either just primarily dominate science and technology to see if we can boost that for views, keeping in mind that that category, if we go to Twitch right now, There's a back and forth here, because if we go to Twitch as a website right now, it's going to autoplay some streams that I don't want. In terms of categories, obviously that's categories we think you'll like, but just categories in general, just chatting is going to stay close to the top. But unless I get at least 5.3K view... Wait. Is it? Oh, this is recommended for me. Hang on. Viewers. I was like, why is 5 higher than 142? So unless we get higher than like 30K viewers at a time, we're not going to boost science and technology up into the part where people are looking for it, other than people who are already coming for me, which as a new creator, you can't really rely on that. What if we go into science? What spelling is that? Not behind the scenes. There's a cat. Can I not search for the category? Science. Yeah, I can't even. I'm going to have to scroll a while to find the category. It may not even show up, because currently it's only finding the search bar. Yeah. Doesn't exist right now. I mean, obviously it exists, but it's not... You're watching on a kayak tech loose? Wow. So you see the dilemma here. Both could be advantageous, and I kind of wish in some regards we could dual category. But this would be an opportunity where perhaps you alternate categories within a show based on what you're actually doing. You know how that goes. Otherwise, just chatting is probably a more likely fit, at least for the majority of the content that might be up here. Top science is 400 streams. Yeah, so that would be a little bit hard to really boost into getting new viewers. And that's kind of an objective on Twitch, is that is the game you have to play. That may not be my personal priority, because I already have an existing audience base and I'm just trying to get you all to watch and educate you. At the same time, I am still trying to grow my Twitch, so getting new viewers through Twitch, possibly a benefit. Girl Thulu is asking about the podcast category. That would be advantageous if you are doing a show like this and you have, like, you know, it's going to be a set time, which we're going to talk about, and go back and forth, or have guests, and you don't have a locked off, like, category that is a non-gaming category on Twitch. So science, whatever. Podcasts would probably be perfect if it's more of a talk showy kind of thing. Although Cujo's asking about talk show category. I don't know if that's a category or a tag. Either way, yes, you could 100% fit in there if you're like, this is my show. I'm going to talk about my interests and my hobbies and things like that. And honestly, the thing is here, I operate in a little bit more of a literal kind of thing. As we have learned in recent years, the categories on Twitch are very much flexible and they don't have to be super literal. So you could 100% go forth as a podcast or talk show or whatever and stick with it and stay there and be totally fine. No reason you necessarily couldn't. So honestly, I will throw that in here. Like, you can be a little bit flexible. The thing is, oh crap. You're going to be a little, you run into the possibility of screwing yourself if you try to do a specific game category, because obviously the gameplay streams are going to take priority over that. So I know it's going to be a tech show. I know it's going to fall into these categories. You could be doing gameplay. So if you're streaming gameplay, obviously go with the game that you're streaming. Keep that in your head, because I'm specifically overlooking this. So we have tech show. It's going here. Then we have to plan out what's going to be in the show, which is the topics we talked about here earlier. So getting back to John Quattro's question, told you I'd come back, about this applying to VODs. So they may just be asking about the offline thing. And if so, yes, 100%. If you are just trying to get better with videos or test for yourself, 100% just record the videos and edit them and then keep them unlisted or private. No one ever has to know you did it, and you can test for yourself. Alternatively, you never really have to upload it, or you can upload to side channels. Same thing with these shows. If you want to just test it out, the format, either just stream to nothing or do a local recording and then delete it, or stream to a side channel where only like your inner circle on your Discord or something gets access to it, and you can then flip it back around and actually pilot it later on. If you think about TV shows, this is, I think, less common these days, where the pilots actually just turn into the first episode. But typically with TV shows, the TV studio or the company or whatever pitching the TV show will often get to a certain stage where they then go plan and film a pilot with the actual cast and things like that. The first episode of a show is often the pilot episode, which is basically the test episode where you're trying to sell the show as, this is what we want to do. Would you like to buy our show? Now, sometimes the pilot never sees the light of day or until after the show ends and it gets leaked or something like that. But sometimes the pilot becomes the first episode. And if it's not been funded or planned out ahead of time, that pilot could be very different than the rest of the show. I believe House, the show with Hugh Laurie, was one of those shows where the pilot has completely different lighting and moods and visuals and a completely different feel from the rest of the first season. You have shows like The Office where the whole first season was a drastic difference from the rest of the show and then they completely changed the show. A little different, but the pilot episode itself, the very first episode of the show, is very different from the second episode and moving forward. And so that is the same concept where you test it out, get feedback, and either it's successful and you just make it the first official episode, or you scrap it and you start over, or you're like, okay, this idea works. I don't like this piece of content I made, but I learned some lessons from it, and I'm going to move forward with this idea and maybe only share the pilot episode to patrons or something. And the same thing with the Inner Circle on Discord. If you have an existing fan funding base of some sort, be it on Patreon, Ko-fi, OnlyFans, Twitter, super follows, YouTube channel members, that's great content to share with them because they get to enjoy it even if it doesn't work for your channel to go public. Or you may find that there is a big following for that, and that can result in two things. That can result in either you get a big enough response from your Patreon effectively group where you're like, okay, I need to make this actual public content and just keep re-releasing it. And even if it's not as successful as your other public content, you keep making it because that's what people are paying you for, and that's worth more than the views. I'm going to point you towards my buddy Wendell from Level 1 Techs, if YouTube will cooperate with me here. He runs a tech channel much like my own, and if you look at their videos, I don't have a hotkey set up for this scene for some reason. Most of their videos are their daily news show. Now, I consider this an issue in a little bit in the sense that it could cost them viewership due to the lower CTR click-through rates on their videos of the actual individual news episodes and the like. But they do a daily news show with their core group here that is supported by their patrons, by their fan funders. And they do this every day because that is the big thing that their entire Patreon subscription group is up for. And so they are literally funding this content, and it's still content that's getting views and bringing new viewers in, but their Patreon group is paying for this and demanding it, and that is ultimately who they're supposed to be beholden to, right? You may also end up in a secondary scenario, or tertiary at this point maybe, where you're only making that content from Patreon, where, you know, is the stream hardcore hiccuping for anyone else? I sure as heck hope not. I don't have any evidence of that on my end. Try lowering your playback resolution. I am streaming pretty high, but we do have transcoding. You may end up in a tertiary scenario where you're making that content exclusively for Patreon. So you're funneling people from your public viewership, you know, generally through your normal videos, and then they support you on Patreon or whatever your private Twitch subs, linked to Discord, whatever. That's a way to leverage Twitch and streaming specifically, is you can get people to subscribe on Twitch, you give them a special role on Discord, secret chat, and then they pay for that through their Twitch subs or whatever. And they continue paying you to make that content, but you never release it publicly. So they are purely joining your fan funding and funding you just to have access to that content. Because you may find that, no, it doesn't really work for public production, especially in the stream world. And be like, okay, my average concurrent viewers on this content is crap, but my diehard subs love it. Then you have sub-only streams, or sub-only videos, or Discord's private night, you know, where you only give it to the people who are your inner circle or who are paying you, or however you want to divide up your fan group from there. And that is an extremely powerful position to be in. And so if you find yourself there, don't consider it a mistake or be like, why isn't this working? I still want to make the content. Leverage that heavily. Okay. Transitioning back to planning our show. So we know we're making a tech show. We know we're making it in this category, and we have this content to choose from, primarily leveraging here the core umbrella of tech education. So we're going to call this, we already know it's a tech show. That's how we started it. So what are the elements of the show that I want to feature? To pick these, this is where we think back to all that I was talking about with regards to getting that content up on other platforms. That is when you start thinking about this. So really think about the platforms that you want to leverage, the platforms you already have accounts on, similar to putting things on Floatplane. Yes. Think about the platforms you like. Spend a couple weeks actually viewing it, filtering results so the algorithms work in your favor, figuring out where you want content to go. So TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Vimeo, wherever the hell you want your content to go, break down where and why. So where and why. TikTok. And then think about what is required for those platforms. So TikTok. Less than or equal to 1 minute or now 3 minutes. But if you want to make that easily shareable on other platforms, you want to keep it less than 1 minute or less. Vertical/square videos. Twitter. Less than 220, I think it is. Videos, ideally square. YouTube, ideally widescreen, any length. And then you also have things like podcasts. Podcasts, audio only. Expectation that it's long. You have, what else? What should we? Stories. Just generalized stories on YouTube, or they're getting rid of fleets on Twitter, but YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. And those are like, I believe, 10 to 15 seconds max. And then vertical. So this is the where and the formatting that you need for it, which can influence how you want to produce the show. And then, of course, you think about the why. And I don't really have anything to write down for this because that's going to be personally, completely personal, up to you. Are the communities that you want to be a part of on this platform? Do you already have existing followers on this platform? Do you have friends on this platform? Do the viewers that you want to watch your channel exist on this platform? So, for example, a piece of anecdotal evidence, which is... What button did I just hit? Okay. Which is mostly, in a sense, irrelevant. Oh, we got a raid from Netcode, raiding with a party of 4. Thank you very much. Hope you're having a wonderful Saturday night here, I believe it is. I can't keep track of what day it is. Thank you for the raid. Ayo. So, a piece of anecdotal evidence that I have encountered that would affect if I was making this particular type of content is TikTok. On TikTok, Twitch has a huge scene. Twitch talk is a thing. A lot of Twitch streamers hop on TikTok and share or look for advice, and that is a whole huge vertical on TikTok. YouTube advice, not so much. YouTube tips, tricks, news, any of that, at least anecdotally based on my following and, hashtag searching and all of that. YouTubers aren't on TikTok looking for more information about YouTube. Now, the reasoning behind this can be considered fairly straightforward because YouTube is a video platform itself, so if people are going to look up information or news or talk about YouTube, they're probably going to do it on YouTube because that's the platform to do it. Meanwhile, on Twitch, while videos are a thing, there's no video discovery or public-facing video things like that, so if they want to go talk about it, they have to go talk about it somewhere else. TikTok is a good place to do it. It obviously exists on YouTube, but that's a reason to leverage TikTok for those who want it shorter. There's a fly. Damn it. Netcode, thank you, brother, for helping me get started with streaming. Hell yeah. That's what today's stream is about as well. Thank you for the raid and the, positive vibes. Positive vibes only in the chat. But yeah, so you have to think about who are on the different platforms and why you might want your content to be there. For example, my tech tutorials and reviews don't make sense as an audio-only podcast, but some of them could make sense as shorter form videos, which we'll touch on in a second. Perfect time to ask thoughts on rating and how it should be used. Ooh, so this is going to be its own little mini video here. Branch off, totally tangent for a second here. Rating is really powerful. I don't think it should be the expectation. There's a lot of entitlement that you should always go raid smaller channels and put your viewers on them. And frankly, I forget to most of the time. But it can be very powerful for building and merging communities. The thing is, if you want it to be the most successful for everyone involved, because this isn't just an opportunity to go shout out someone else's channel and get them new viewers potentially. It's also an opportunity to show your community you understand them and to grow your own community, not by leeching that streamer's viewers, but by the mutual interest and understanding of what's happening. So, for example, me streaming this right now, if I go find a Minecraft YouTuber that's doing Minecraft PvP and they're 12, I can go raid them with whatever viewers I have and they could be really excited for it. But I have no reason to believe that any of you here right now are interested in that. And that is the biggest mistake I see all the time, is people just kind of dump their viewers on random people and then those viewers trail off, and it's not a fun thing for the viewers who are like, why the hell did you put me here? It's not a beneficial thing for the people receiving the raid either, because they can get that positive moment, but then they don't keep the viewers or gain returning viewers. There's always, there's crossovers of all audiences and interest groups, and there's always a way for that to work out for X small percentage of viewers. But ultimately, I think you have to carefully pick and choose who you are rating and who you think meshes out with your audience in order to get the best results. Now, you can just do whatever you want. You're free to. But if you want the most optimal way to really make it a community moment, I think that's the way to go. Doesn't a cross-pollination of audiences help with getting recommended out on Twitch later too? Yeah, so if you are an Apex Legends streamer and a super competitive streamer and you go raid another competitive streamer while they're not in the middle of an actual tournament and drop all your viewers there, that's going to be awesome. That streamer's going to remember it, and they have a reason to go point their viewers back to you. For example, that Minecraft YouTuber, outside of the fact that they might think there's a quid pro quo for me rating them in the first place, they don't necessarily have a reason to point their Minecraft YouTubers or viewers back on me because I'm not streaming Minecraft. So keeping that similar, and it doesn't have to be the same game every time by any stretch, similar vibes. Like if I go find someone with neon VHS vibes or something, might work out as well. But that kind of general idea, yeah. And as Kaidesa is pointing out, if you drop the wrong crowd on a streamer, they could have some really nasty reactions and kind of ruin their day, depending on how it goes. Don't suppose there's a way to automate ratings so you can't forget. No, and that's what auto hosting is for. So when I go offline, it would just host someone else's stream. And the same thoughts and considerations should be considered for hosting as well. But no, I mean, you could script something to automate rating, but it wouldn't be as effective as actually being involved yourself. All right, hope that answered the question. Let me get a drink here, and we will resume our show planning. So, we've picked out the platforms that exist, and then you can fan on YouTube since 2015. First time joining. Welcome, welcome. We've planned out our platforms and why, or, the requirements to put on there. Now we can decide based on the content we're streaming. That's a dash instead of a colon. What makes sense for our content, and then we can decide based on a completely subjective, and you got to decide for yourself analysis, where and why you would actually want to post. So for example, I don't really do much with podcasts at the moment. I'm hoping to get that started again soon, but currently I don't have this. I don't do stories a whole lot. That's something more, stories are more suited for photos rather than video clips, especially now that short form content is a thing. So these aren't really it for me, but YouTube is obviously my main in the first place, and this content will be fed back to YouTube, so that's a bright green. Twitter will contain excerpts of things as well, and in an ideal world, I will have some sort of takes or clips that I can cut out to TikTok, and there is a big audience for streamers and Twitch-related things, as well as tech in general. Not as big, but it's on there. And so those are the ones that, as a rough estimate here, I might consider for my show. But if you're doing more gameplay stuff, while there are gameplay edits on TikTok, it's a lot harder to really make it appear great because super low quality vertical video and blah, blah, blah. It's harder. It requires more work for you, or to just accept that it will be lazy edits, but you can do it. But Twitter and YouTube might be best. If you're doing game console modding or something, YouTube and even pictures for your stories or Instagram pictures or Instagram little clips might work best. If you're doing just a long-form talk show, podcasts are probably best combined with YouTube for that as well. And then you can do little excerpts for Twitter and TikTok. Got a lot going on there. So we picked out where and why. Next is to pick your segments. So we'll come back up here to our how-to. Choose platforms. Where, why, requirements. And then plan segments, which are the chunks of the show. The big misconception, which of course depends entirely on your objectives and the time that you spend streaming, but the biggest, I think, mistake that streamers make, even if they're not planning a show, but they're just streaming in general, involves only having a single thing happen on your stream. The worst kind of stream, unless you are the most entertaining person in the world or you're doing something incredibly unique, the worst thing you can do for a stream, be it gaming or otherwise, is to have a static scene where nothing changes and nothing exciting happens. I'm going to retweet our stream here while I remember it before I forget. So think about a gameplay stream. And if your gameplay stream is just, even if you have other scenes but you don't really use them, if your gameplay stream is just a face cam in the corner with your gameplay and maybe a chat overlay or something, and that's all that's ever really shown unless you have to run to the bathroom, that's a pretty boring stream. Even if your gameplay is great, unless you're a top tier entertainer or doing some crazy unique thing in your gameplay, you might want to change that up. Attention spans are really short. You'll notice movies and TV shows are constantly cutting different camera angles and close-ups and making sure there's always action because people tune out really, really quickly. Same thing applies there. You want different scenes. You want to, I think a big thing I pointed out, I think it was during our Discord stage channel yesterday. A big thing that I don't think people think about is that if they are getting chat, like it's okay to put off chat a little bit if you're focused on gameplay or whatever subject you're talking about right now, like me teaching this. It's okay to put off chat for a minute here or a few minutes to finish your thought or to finish what you're doing, but you have to make sure you come back to your chat or to your sub alerts or to your follower alerts or whatever your secondary interactive element is. You have to make sure you come back to it. And people don't often do that. When they're game streaming, they may try to squeeze in a chat interaction between matches, but they're still queuing up matches and just rolling through matches one after another without taking a break. And frankly, in between matches, you should be disconnecting and not re-queuing, switching to a just chatting scene or something else happening and interacting with your chat for a few minutes to give them that break and to give them that interactive time and to reduce the dead air that happens during your gameplay and then go back into the game. And frankly, that break from the game, if you're losing or getting tilted, will actually help you stay positive and more enjoyable to watch in your stream anyway in the first place. That's really powerful. Should frequency or schedule determine when or why? Also, like TikTok requires a ton of uploads, whereas YouTube hurts if you post more often. Yes, that includes in the requirements. So requirements: length, format, frequency, what's the word I'm looking for? We'll just say audio visual for now. So frequency is a big deal. I have seen a lot of TikToks where, so just as a note, on most platforms, and I realize the incredible contradiction I'm creating right now, but on most platforms that are short and mobile oriented, the channels that are gurus on how to grow really quickly on those platforms are usually making up a lot of their tips. And the same applies to Twitch Talk. I am calling those out all the time on my own TikTok, tiktok.com/@EposVox, by the way. But they are making up about half of what they say. I'm making that up number myself. That's how made up this all is. I'm making that number up myself. But they are making up a ton of their tips. And some of those tips include how often you actually have to post. There are generally no rules for that. Now, people can actually study, especially people who have access to like aggregate channel data. They can study and find out how that affects things. But they don't necessarily have the be-all, end-all answer. And then there's made-up tips like there was a bunch going around for TikTok and Instagram saying you have to interact with X number of posts in order for people to find yours. That's not it. That's them wanting you to interact with their posts to boost their channel. no platform on earth cares if you're interacting with other people in order to promote your content, because a viewer isn't measuring that when they go watch you. Lance says, if someone I'm watching doesn't respond to chat for like 3 minutes straight, I leave the stream 100% of the time. Exactly. So with YouTube specifically, just as a little nugget of information, you get 3 video notifications going live per 24 hours and 1 community post. So within a 24-hour span, if you post more than 3 videos, you do not have notifications sent out to viewers. Now, you have the chance of alternating notifications for viewers who have personalized notifications instead of all notifications. They may only get, they may not get one of your videos because YouTube doesn't think they'll click on it, but they may get the one that no one else is getting. But ultimately, in terms of the push notifications, which is what the culture relies on at the moment, I hate it. I disable all push notifications, but you only get 3 for 24 hours. So if you plan on posting a ton of content, just posting it to YouTube may not work if you're planning on posting a bunch to YouTube, because eventually your viewers will stop seeing it, and if they're not clicking on it, then YouTube stop promoting it as much and blah, blah, blah. This doesn't affect the subscriptions feed, but it does affect your push notifications. And you only get 1 of those community posts, tab posts. So if you want somewhere you can post really frequently, the more mobile-oriented platforms where they want as much content as possible, like TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, kind of even, good to go there. TikTok is a platform where you could probably never post too much because they're always trying to push more and more content. And frankly, most of your content, you're unlike YouTube. So YouTube, this is a complete tangent, but I want the information out there since someone might ask. With YouTube, a lot of your viewership is kind of heavily influenced by who watches in the first few hours. Now, YouTube's algorithms and systems and search and discovery system will eventually figure out who is supposed to watch your video long term, but if you get a ton of videos really quickly or a ton of views, really quickly within the first few hours, that gives YouTube a ton of information to properly promote your videos better and show that it's performing well or not performing well. Whereas on a platform like TikTok, half the time, if you post a TikTok video, you may not see views for hours because people aren't just pulling up their TikTok follower feed and going and watching that. Some people heavily curate their followers, but a lot of people, and especially, randoms that are going to find you, are just in their For You page. So most of my TikToks, even I'm sitting at 17.9K followers right now, which sounds big, but isn't for TikTok. Most of my videos don't even take off until overnight. I'll post it, go to bed, and I'll wake up and it has an actual view count. Whereas on YouTube, I am refreshing my real-time analytics every couple minutes for the first few hours. So there's a big difference there as well. Does notifications apply to YouTube Shorts as well? So they no longer push. So the short answer is no, both in the sense that they don't count against your notifications total, but also viewers won't be notified of them, which is kind of a double-edged sword. They do still sometimes show up in the personalized notifications category, but not the all notifications category. And they did this to try to encourage creators to post a lot more shorts without feeling like they're sacrificing their notifications. So it's kind of a win, but also you're going to see less viewership on them these days as a result, at least in terms of day one viewership, because not a lot of people use the sub feed on YouTube anymore either. Hydrate, everyone. So that's the where and why, the platforms that you want your content to be on. So then you need to plan your segments and pick out your segments based on what's appropriate for those platforms or for, generalized syndication. So actually, as a bit of a, I guess, philosophical discussion for a moment, I've brought this up a couple times recently, but I want to just add it in here because it's relevant. I believe personally, and this is purely a personalized stance, but I personally believe in syndicating your content as many places as you can within reason where it makes sense. So in an ideal world, you're adapting that for all the different platforms. So like Facebook, you're adapting for it with subtitles and vertical video and short form. You're putting it on YouTube. You're duplicating your YouTube copy to Vimeo or Dailymotion. I don't know if Dailymotion's still around. And your Twitch videos, you're uploading to there as well. And Library, which syndicates to Odyssey, all of those places, so that you always have your content in places that viewers might find you or might want to watch you, but also you have backups and things like that. At the same time, ultimately, as every day passes, the only platforms that truly matter are the big mainstream ones with mass audiences. That's just how the world works. But a lot of people get hung up on the idea that they can't monetize on these platforms. But if you're only getting 20 views or less on those platforms, you're not missing out on any ad revenue, and it's not hurting you to have it on there. But I believe in syndicating as much as possible, but the most effective way to syndicate, which, you know, we're all human beings, and unless you have a massive media team behind you, you can't do on scale like someone like Gary Vaynerchuk can, when that 64 pieces of content PDF I showed, which, by the way, I never linked in chat, so I will go ahead and do that now for those of you who are still around. We're still human beings, and you can't do this. So then you need to prioritize. That's the whole prioritize point. The platforms that you want to be able to dedicate time or find a more efficient workflow to specifically cut and cater that content towards those platforms. Because you're going to get, if you're just posting the same YouTube video formatted for YouTube with the same YouTube call to actions and all of that on every single platform, it's going to perform worse or not be as effective towards building your brand, because the people on those extra platforms aren't necessarily caring about your video because it's not built for them. So for example, if you post a YouTube video like super squished down or cropped or something on your phone, you know, in the vertical box, like super squished, to then post to TikTok, no one's going to watch it because it's not formatted or adapted properly for TikTok. Meanwhile, if you get a little excerpt of it that's a nice take or a highlight moment or something, or a cool thing that happens, and you format it properly for TikTok and you add the captions and all that, it could perform well on its own on that platform, leveraging the native tools and discoverability on those platforms. And that is incredibly important. But you need to prioritize which platforms you think are the most important for you, because you just don't have the capacity to hit them all. And it's not worth it to do, like, even if you have the capacity, if that's like you spend every waking hour working on syncing up your content in between streams, that's not worth it. Whatever fool introduced yourself with the channel point, thank you. All right, so we have the where and why done, and so now we're planning our segments. So for me, a big segment that I want to bring back, because it can be its own YouTube video, because it was before, is one called Stream Critique. And I can actually pull this up on my channel. If I come to playlists, I should have already had this queued up. Actually, I have it on the Stream Critique page. I only did 7 episodes of this before I ended up, please call me fool. I only did 7 episodes of this before I ended up not being able to keep it going, because I was trying to overdo it. And this came up right as I was having a kid, so time got really short and all of my shooting space got wrecked, but you know, whatever. But I had a show called Stream Critique, which was one of the original stream evaluations, let's review your stream shows, before a bunch of other people started doing them. This was the main one, and I think in the absence of mine kind of disappearing a few months later, a couple of the other streaming channels started doing them. But even though I'm sure one existed beforehand, I'd like to call mine the original. So I have the show that I was doing that I want to bring back. You all freaking loved it. I got to bring out some really specific advice about streaming and about, you know, sorry, my allergies are really bad, about specific streams that I think you all, you know, was really valuable, and the feedback on it was incredible. And I got to shout some of you all out and get promotion for streamers that are doing cool stuff. I really enjoyed this, and I made some cool friends through it as well. I don't know, like, I've been planning it. I have reopened submissions to it, as is the case with the Stream Critique application here that I linked in the description. I want to bring it back. So in order to do so, I think it should be a part of this Twitch show. I do the stream reviews in real time with you all here on Twitch. That's kind of what I wanted to do in the first place, and I was actually reformatting it for a little bit. I was going to do it as part of a Twitch show called the Stream Professor's Report Card. I don't know which title I'm going to stick with. Probably still Stream Critique, because it's already a playlist and a show idea I have going. But the Stream Professor's Report Card or Streamer Report Card or whatever could be an aspect of that show, like the final wrap up at the end of that segment of the show or whatever. But I know for absolute certain I want Stream Critique. From there, I want to do, so we have Stream Critique. I want to do a highlight of cool stuff that I've found. I haven't personally narrowed it down to what specifically, but think about it like an app showcase. Oh wait, I have this. All right, so show segments. I'm not dividing this up right. So we have Stream Critique, an app slash, let's say, tool showcase. Useful stuff that I don't necessarily know if I'm going to make a dedicated video on, but we're going to put that there. If I really wanted to get maximum ROI, or I specifically just didn't have time to prep it for an episode, or I needed an extended break, I could actually just run a playthrough of the upcoming, or theoretically the previous playback, but that might cost some of my viewers. But my upcoming or previous episode of a video about like 5 OBS plugins or 5 OBS filters or scripts or whatever. I could run that there if I needed to. It would be really cool to run the next episode and then you all get a sneak peek at it. But theoretically, I could leverage an older one as well. Thank you, Kaidessa, for the Prime sub! Any primers in the chat? So that's a segment I want to have. Now, keep in mind, with all of this, I guess I should have said you should kind of pick out your time length, or at least be brainstorming it at this point. You don't have to solidify it just yet. But for me, it helps to plan out blocks of time, because with my schedule, with my kid and stuff, I can only block out an hour, maybe 2 if I'm lucky. I'm still working that out. But, you know, I have a general idea of the time frame that I can work in order to make this happen. And so that will affect the number of segments you have, as well as the length of them and the depth of them. So if you end up with a bunch of segments that you're really committed to, I would recommend doing pilot different formats shows and see what sticks the best, or just do different ones. So if you stream on Tuesday and Thursday, Tuesday is a different show from Thursday, and maybe there's a shared segment across both, but otherwise the segments kind of differ a little bit. Will Prime for a painful call out. Thank you for the Prime sub, Fat Ross, and Kaidessa gifting a sub to Ginazio Fantasma. And yeah, also consider your setup and prep work for your segments, as well, as Cujo pointed out. Thankfully, I get to not include that in my length of time, so I usually have a 20 to 30 minute window on either side of my streams, which is why sometimes for AFK chat, I show up and everything's broken and we start weirdly, but, you know, I usually have that buffer, but you may not, and so you also have to consider that as well. Which is why as much planning here as possible is super important, because you can be most efficient if you already, like, if you're working on your notes or getting stuff in the right place throughout the show, or throughout the week rather, leading up to your show, then you may be in a position where you can just flip everything on and go. But if you need to get a whole lot ready before you do, then you're going to run into some issues. Also, get subscribed on YouTube, because I will have a video coming on how to completely automate your own dedicated streaming rig to set up everything on its own, so you really just turn it on and it's ready to rock, which should be pretty exciting. I'm still in the planning stages for that, so sometimes I point out these videos. Granted, sometimes it takes 2 years to get to these videos I point out. I don't think this is the case for this one, but sometimes I point these out and people are like 2 days later, like, where's that video? I have an infinitesimal list of videos that I have to make. So I know I want to feature cool stuff that I found that I don't necessarily get to make a video on. And that is part of the cool thing to do with your show, is if you're already making dedicated video content, then some of this can be stuff that you don't have the time or energy to make dedicated videos on, or would work while live because it's lower production value, but wouldn't work during a show. That's a big thing I'm trying to leverage here as well. So featured stuff there. And then I'm going to create a couple vague categories based on what we have here. So I'm going to have what I call the tweak zone, which sounds incredibly cringy, and I'll change it later. But this will be, I'm going to hide that line break or page break. This will be a kind of amalgamation of general testing and tweaking and unboxings. So this will be me messing with the stuff that I have. So unboxings and first impressions, and general testing, tweaking. Because this is the completely unscripted, mostly unplanned, I just want to play with this and have you all along for the ride show or segment rather, that could take up most of the show one week and a tiny bit of the show the next week. Like today's stream, I have a singular product to unbox. Probably won't take very much time because it's not something I can test while live. But other weeks I may be like, let's just play with this cool thing as the main part of the show. God dang it, my freaking allergies and my itchy nose. I look like a cocaine addict right now. All right, and then we have what I'm going to call just general Q&A time. Now, I think you should always allocate time for this in your show. Unless you're a huge streamer with like a massive following and you just get to say, screw chat, I have money. You should always allocate time for the interactivity, be it in between segments or a dedicated segment. So the way I run my streams is that in between segments or in between even topics within a segment, I will still respond to you all as I am right now, taking the time to respond to chat in between thoughts or paragraphs or whatever. Epos hasn't seen Real Cocaine Addicts, I feel like. But also I have dedicated time if things work out or don't run too long. I reserve a little bit of time at the end just for dedicated Q&A. Because sometimes, again, I love you all, but sometimes you all show up to a stream where I'm clearly talking about a specific topic, and you all are like, I have this very specific technical problem I want your help with, and if I think I can answer it during the stream, then I'll do so, and do that within the dedicated end time. And half the time those people are gone because they're mad I didn't help with their personal tech support question in the middle of a topic stream. But, realistically, it's fine. Switch back to main camera because my Twitch thing was showing me as offline. I think we're good, though. Yeah, I think we're good. My Twitch chat up here shows the offline indicator. What will be needed to qualify for stream critique? Filling out the application. That is all. Yo, Epos, what NVMe should I buy? Yeah, exactly. A fine question to ask. You could ask it and get more answers from our lovely community on our Discord server at discord.gg/EposVox, but not something I'm going to answer in the middle of a specific topic that I'm talking about. Now, I will say, just as a side tangent, there are plenty of chatters that you can ignore because otherwise you're going to repeat yourself constantly or you're going to end up sounding condescending as rude as I often do, such as the people who show up in the middle of a YouTube stream, which has a DVR and you can rewind and you should almost always start at the beginning of the stream and maybe watch at 2 times speed to catch up, who will be like, did he talk about this subject yet? Or when are you going to talk about this subject? Or wait, did I miss this? Or, I missed this part. What did you say? When I'm like 3 subjects later. And I'm just like, no, I'm not doing it, because then I'm just going to answer it every 5 seconds. I wonder if you should put that in the title, or would that drive viewers away? Honestly, I don't know how much stream titles matter. I think it would come across as like snarky enough and like witty that people would assume that you're not serious, but who knows? But yeah, beginning and end, you should probably allocate time for this Q&A / just chatting. Because you also don't want to start your show like as soon as you hit go live and everyone's talking about getting rid of starting soon screens and stuff, because who wants to sit there and watch a stream that hasn't started yet? So you generally want to allocate the first X amount of time at the start of your stream when you're still waiting for everyone to show up, and then at the end of your stream as you're done wrapping up for that. For me, this may mostly be at the start because of something we're going to talk about in a moment. So we're going to plan segments, and then we're going to plan buffer time for setup / prep, plan Q&A / just chatting buffer as well. So then there is a final segment that I want to include in my stream. And that is these things right here. The things that I said don't make sense to be the main point of my show. Gameplay and Pokemon card openings. Now, these aren't entirely relevant to the main point of the show, but there's still something some people want to watch me do, and some things that I enjoy doing. And in order to be able to do that thing, you have to work it into your format. So for this, I feel like it would make sense to end the show with the after party. Now, there are some more granular decisions that go into planning this that may make you not want to do this, such as if you're chasing partnership and you're chasing that average viewer retention number that you have to maintain to keep really high to get partnership, a lot of people are going to drop off during the after party. So if you're worried about having that chunk of time where you have less average viewers and that reflecting poorly on you or holding you back from something, you kind of want to keep all of your content that you have, while you're live, being as hard-hitting as possible and do this elsewhere. Alternatively, we also do gameplay. So we'll put here gameplay and Pokemon card openings. So that's my after party. Alternatively, we also do this for Discord Community Game Night. We have another Discord Community Game Night coming July 31st at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, a little bit earlier for your Europe people. Also, so I can get to my kid a little bit quicker for putting him to bed, because I'm responsible for a lot of that. Will this be available after as a VOD? I will edit it up into some parts for YouTube at some point, yes. The whole VOD, I mean, it'll be up on Twitch, but I'm not posting it raw like this, but it'll be edited up. But we are doing a Discord Community Game Night July 31st, and it's going to be Halo 3 again, and we're going to do some customs and some fun stuff, because that was incredible last time, and we're going to do it again. And so it's a Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern. But that is another outlet where if I ended up never streaming gameplay, I still get to do that and do it in a stream-like format with my audience. It's just not the main part of the show. And this is the big thing that I was talking about during my previous Twitch stream. I think it was 2 nights ago now, where we were talking about choosing your career path and pointing out the things adjacent to what you do. So you may find that, and I also want to clarify here that I'm specifically pointing out gameplay so much because I'm making a huge effort on my part to make things as generally applicable as possible, because I firmly believe that my content is helpful and useful for people who are not game streamers as well, and so much is catered towards game streaming that I'm trying to branch out a little bit, but I want to make sure I always tie it back to gaming too, because if I don't mention it, it may sound like it doesn't apply to it at all. During our conversation about finding your career path, we talked about finding, like, writing in a bubble the vague idea of what you want to do for a living, which may be video games, and then identifying actual jobs that you kind of dot around it that are adjacent to or relevant to that niche. So instead of just playing games for a living, which isn't a job, you can have game development, writing in games, game reviewing, games journalism, game support, QA testing, those kinds of event hosting, esports casting. There's all sorts of jobs around gaming. And so you may find specifically that instead of doing a plain Jane gameplay stream, that either you can't keep up with the strenuous, like, playing your competitive game while chatting with chat, or you're not getting as much enjoyment out of it, or what have you. You may find that you can do a show that is either casting events or giving a gaming news show. Those do really well if you do it right and have the right comedy or sketches, or, you know, something that is about gaming, or reviews even. First impressions, those kinds of things. Things that are about gaming and involve video games, but aren't just standard gameplay let's play streams, because everyone's doing them. It's hard to innovate. It's hard to really get a grip with those. You may find that your actual most successful show idea is doing something adjacent to that, and then you wrap it up with playing the game yourself and having a little bit of fun there, playing with viewers, chatting with viewers while you play and whatever, so that you can still do both of them at the same time and still get that out there. Because I think that's a big thing that people sacrifice a lot, is they sacrifice the success of their stream, their own personal happiness, actually finding a career in what they're doing, by chasing the generalized idea instead. And so, as Cujo alluded to, trying to spoil the heck out of this stream like half an hour ago, you can do gameplay in different ways. So, like, specifically with my show, and this is actually how I handle it behind the scenes, is a ton of my gameplay time for just me playing video games is not just me sitting down and playing games. Although I'm still working on that a little bit myself. No, Cujo, you were a huge help. Yeah, I'm just jumping on you because it was funny. A lot of my times isn't me just sitting down and being like, all right, I'm going to play a game and just playing it for me. It is testing the hardware that I'm reviewing. So all of my capture card reviews, all of my streaming tutorials, things like that, those usually take a few extra hours than they should, because I'm putting in that time to actually play games for myself, which is also why when I'm doing capture card tests and stuff, the games change all the time, because I am, picking out games I want to play and testing the capture cards with those. Gameplay should be a filler piece of content, not the core content that you're streaming. Generally speaking, there's all kinds of exceptions, and there are people who can make it, but not everyone can, especially as saturated as it has become. especially if you're talking about, as Jay Brucifer is pointing out here, especially when you're talking about showcasing your personality. Because being real, being serious right now, if I get my keyboard and my mouse and my microphone up, me responding to a game and playing like this and ignoring chat until in between matches, you don't get to learn a lot about me. You can through the visual branding, the music, the vibe that I establish, but you don't get the interactivity and the brand building and the personality development that you do of the rest of the show. And that is what converts someone who stops by your stream into a long-term follower and returning viewer, are those elements. Gameplay is often secondary, especially if you're not at that top tier, like hyper competitive, you are Shroud level gameplay here. That is often the case. So we have completed the step. We have planned out our segments and, of course, our buffer time and all of that. We've planned our segments. We're good to go, right? Well, I mean, yes, but if we want to get into the technical details, now we have to talk about the literal building of our stream. Before that, I want to return to chat, of course. Whoa, I dropped something. Or I just cracked my TV stand. I honestly don't know which. Hold on. Oh, I dropped a remote. Okay. I was like, I really hope I didn't crack this thing because it could all come crumbling down. All right, to answer Lance's question about starting soon screens, it depends on how long you run them, and there is no objective answer. Like, it's all subjective and whatever, but there is growing sentiment that even if it's looping or whatever, a starting soon screen that is just an animated whatever kind of turns viewers away because unless other than your diehard viewers, if someone just kind of is like, oh, they're live, they show up and either they have something else to do, they have something else they want to watch, whatever. If you're not actually making content, just like you mentioned yourself, Lance, if they're ignoring chat, if content isn't on the screen, any number of your viewers are going to bounce because that's dead air. All dead air is bad. It's the same reason that I push for Be Right Back screens to instead have highlights or other pieces of content displaying at the same time while still indicating that it's a Be Right Back screen, rather than just pulling this up and walking away. Because people who have short attention spans or want to watch something else are going to be like, what the hell, and not come back. But you can innovate in different ways there and whatever. Since the show is planned out, I'm wondering if having some sort of like a topic index to indicate to viewers that topics have already been talked. So yes, Phoenix, I actually did this for a little while on Streamer News. I actually had a little slideshow that I made ahead of every stream with all the topics that I would do, and it would have an indicator of what the current topic is, and then the topics around it of what's been previous and what's coming up next, kind of like I do for some of my on-video timecode bars in general anyway. The issue is depending on how many topics you have, because we sometimes talk about a lot in Streamer News, the slideshow source for OBS can only house so many images. Like, it's like 15 or 13 or something, and it just can't play more than that. So you can run into some issues trying to make it work. You can probably do it better through HTML and some scripting. There's probably better ways to do it, but just trying to do it lazy as like an overlay screen slideshow source in OBS did not work out for me due to the limited quantity you can choose from. But absolutely, that element could be super key, and we're actually going to talk about that in the next section when we're talking about the building of the scene itself. I like the idea of a highlights video for BRB starting soon. Yeah! Alright, so that brings us to section, I don't know why I just said number 2. It is actually section number 4, so 2 plus 2. Why do I not have a Stream Deck button for this view? We are going to change that. I'm going to get rid of this category change that I had before. We're going to drag on to my Stream Deck and OBS scene. We're going to call this desktop split. We're going to choose our desktop split here. And now I'll stop fumbling this scene switch. Hey, what's up, Kevin Mation? Hope you're having a wonderful evening. I wonder if someone Nerd or Die could make a plugin or something to do that. Probably, because then you could just load up, because theoretically, like, there's no limit to a browser source displaying a big slideshow. So if you could get that going in the same fashion, excuse me, would work fine. And theoretically, even there, Well, no, because you don't have manual control over their current slideshow thing, but it would be super easy to rig up if someone had the experience, which I don't. I'm not a coder. I try. I don't have the attention span. So that brings us to the fourth section here. So we planned our generalized show. We have the where and the why, which will affect our segments. We have our segments, and now we build the stream. Okay, so now we're building the stream. Or the show. I guess I should call this the show. Building the stream / show. Okay? Allergies. Love the OBS plugin video. Thank you. McGoogle Mac 123. That's a name I haven't heard in a very long time. I think I also knew your Kevin Mation name, though. Yes, this is the SM7B. I have the RE20 at my main desk setup. This one is better for rejecting, well, some background noise in general, but also the high frequencies of my CRT I have here and things like that. The flyback noise and the RMF interference and all of that. SM7B is a lot better at rejecting it, and I just like using a variety of different microphones. Pretty much every set that I use has a different microphone. This is just the best tool for the job here. Well, Lance has some crazy HTML setups that he has controlling OBS, so I know it's possible. He does wild stuff. Oh yeah, you set up the HTML pages to animate in HTML instead of image and video editors. Lol. All right, so we're building the stream / show. So this is actually something we may work on a little bit, both physically and digitally here today, because there's a lot involved here. So you need to think about a few things. So this is our actual ideas. Let's go back to the how-to category here. So build, show / stream. So you need to think about a few different categories. You have the physical realm to choose from. We'll talk about it in a moment. You have OBS and everything involved in that. You have branding, visuals, graphics, things like that. And then you have your distribution workflow, which can kind of be its own thing. We'll wrap that around to 0.9 here. But let's start with this. So you need to plan out the physical aspects of your show. This may sound silly if you already have a streaming setup and things like that, but your current streaming setup may not accommodate what you want to do. So for example, this whole stream setup that I have right here, that was an exact translation of what I had in my retro room setup at my previous apartment, that I lived in before we moved into this studio. This was built as primarily for me to just play video games, and then I was like, okay, I kind of want to stream with that. It was built for that, and then further adapted for me to be able to shoot videos here, because in 2020, that set became my main video set once we had my baby and the living room got taken over. But it wasn't built for the extra things that I want to do. So for example, this setup is not really capable of me doing PC gaming streams. Now, if I swapped out the PC configurations and set up a gaming PC and things like that, it could work. But it also wasn't suited for my Pokemon openings. I was doing all of my Pokemon card openings. I wanted to turn that into a thing. I didn't have the capabilities for that. So in order to update the set for it, I got a few different things. I got my overhead camera, which is a Panasonic G7. I mounted it on the ceiling with the Elgato ring light, which I'm going to turn on now. It's not in focus, but you get the idea. And then I can set up a split view where I am going through my Pokemon cards as I do in these streams, and you can see both my face and the cards and stuff in real time. I also needed a mic arm that I can move out of the way specifically for that setup. I'm using the Wave mic arm LP for this now. It's a little loose on the mount, but it's fine. So I'm going to turn the ring light back off now. So I needed to make modifications to my set before I started the show. Now, if you're just doing pilots, just doing tests and things like that, you may not want to make these modifications, in which case you can use temporary solutions, such as getting a little clamp and mounting your phone overhead pointed down at your screen to do the Pokemon openings, or, getting a half janky put together setup just to test the format. But once you're committed to it, even if you're not upgrading expensive gear, just getting the basics down, you want to make sure you have the space, wrong split, the space, layout, comfortable, long-term sit workflow for doing the thing you want to do. If you want to teach topics and have a whiteboard in the background. You need to get a whiteboard. You may need a secondary camera angle to focus on the whiteboard. If you want peepers? If you want people's names highlighted in the background, you need a pegboard or something to highlight it in there. If you want specific, specific things to be done, you need to lay them out. So interactive elements, camera angles, audio. So a big one that I have struggled with due to the way that I typically set up my recording setups and things like that is my audio is designed for me to sit in one place and talk. So for a few of those episodes of AFK Chat, I was actually getting up and moving around and testing things. My frame rate just died there. That was weird. Thanks, OBS. And beepers. That's so 80s. And the static microphone was not picking me up very well. At that point, if you're planning on getting up and teaching concepts or building things or painting streams or something around a space, a static desktop mic may not be the best choice for you, and you may need a lav mic and a wireless lav kit or something. I recommend checking out Deity microphones for that stuff. If you're doing like more professional stuff or doing things that you need the physical space in front of you occupied, you may need a shotgun mic out of frame instead of a desktop mic. And you need the audio that's right for your job because what is the standard desktop streaming microphone stuff it doesn't apply to every situation. And that is incredibly important that not everyone considers. And while some of the USB condenser microphones kind of technically work double duty and you can set them back and yell into them, the audio quality from them gets trash. By the way, Yitza, you seem very uncomfortable with the idea of nail polish, so I'd recommend seeing a therapist. You need some help. Just kidding. But if it makes you that uncomfortable, you should maybe find something else to watch. So we have the physical realm. The physical, what are we doing? But we also have the digital realm. So you need to have OBS set up ahead of time, because if you're scrambling to set up all your scenes while you're live or before you go live, there's a lot to consider there. So for example, scenes and scene layouts. What do you need to showcase? So we talked about just a minute ago, if you're doing a news show or a multiple topic show like a podcast or something, having an image slideshow that shows the different, or with HTML files, you could actually just do dynamic text elements, but text or image layers that you can then switch between to indicate what subject you were on and what topic you were talking about. That's a way to keep audiences caught up with where you're at and what you're doing. You may need you'll need a balance between your gameplay scene, your dedicated face cam scene. So for example, right here, I have a few different scenes set up. I have my main camera, I have a side camera, which I'm currently adapting that we will work on for another setup. We have my overhead camera from when I'm unboxing something big, which we'll take a break from this big subject and do in a moment. I have my split overhead and face cam view. So when I'm opening a pack of Pokemon cards, you can see my big interaction in real time and be like, whoa! That's functionally kind of important. And then I also have my desktop split screen here, so you can see what I'm doing on the desk, websites that I need to feature, what I'm typing. We've got my back angle, that is when I'm picking out stuff in the studio or illustrating the setup itself, and so on and so forth. Now, most of what I'm featuring involves a bunch of different camera angles, and while you can do that on the cheap with a bunch of different phones and Droid Cam or Epoch Cam or NDI or whatever, it doesn't always have to be about different cameras. So you have your main camera, like say you're doing a painting stream, you may have your main camera pointed at your canvas or whatever, but then you also have a just chatting screen where you flip it around and point it at yourself and have chat on screen. Or maybe you have a split view like our desktop view here that has the desktop on screen and things like that. You may also need browser sources for game nights where you have, party game details or tournament brackets. You need to make sure you have those set up, and you need to make sure they are super organized. I also have a video on like OCD levels of organizing OBS and your streams and your scenes and things like that coming soon as well. I am excited for that one. You need to get all that together and organized. But then there's other elements to consider. And some of this kind of blends in with branding, but think about also considerations for the actual format that you want to stream. So we're talking resolution, aspect ratio, frame rate, and so on. If you're doing a stream that mainly involves gameplay, even if your cameras aren't on stream or aren't 60 FPS, your gameplay should generally, I mean, there's no universal rules, and I advocate all the time for situations where this isn't the case, but many times your gameplay should be 60 FPS. So even if your cameras are on screen for 30% of the stream and they're not 60 FPS, your gameplay may be 60 FPS. And if that's the primary focus of your content, that's what you should leverage. If you're doing more text-based things like programming or teaching or slow-moving things like art, higher resolution and higher quality at a lower frame rate may be more appropriate. For example, if you're just doing desktop capture like text-based, programming or things like that where you don't have a big or any camera presence at all, even 15 FPS is okay because you will get higher image quality per frame. It's probably not necessary in most scenarios, but keep in mind, it is a little bit better. I need to blow my nose real quick so I stop rubbing it like apparently not cocaine addicts, but yeah, give me just 1 second here. Yep, time for me to look away for a moment. So part of this is also to finalize our streams here and things like that. The Real Red Pill is hosting your own website that has an independent chat along with chat and subscriptions and stuff like that. So yes, but you're also still going to be very much involved with the chat on the platform. You're not going to have success on any given platform if you're only responding to the chat on your own platform. So you'll definitely need to merge them in some capacity. So these details also matter because you need to keep... Thank you, Ahmeds, for the tier 1 sub. 23 months. Damn, dude. I don't know that I would recommend having your stream chat in Discord unless you have a dedicated stream chat room. I don't know. That doesn't feel great, but... Okay. Anyway, if you've been hearing the music in the background, by the way, I don't know if you can, but that is backing track or royalty-free rock and heavy metal music that you can use in your videos and streams for free. You can head to backingtrack.gg to stream it from your favorite streaming service or just find it on your favorite streaming service. Or you can get free downloads and the stems to remix it yourself in our Discord at discord.gg/EposVox. So the formats and things like that matter because you need to take into consideration where you're going to be reposting it. And this also affects how your scenes and your layouts are set up as well. So for example, again, TikTok, it needs to be vertical. So if you are doing something that is purely like high resolution, widescreen only, it's going to be really difficult to adapt that to TikTok. Meanwhile, this split view right here, I have Cujo in the chat who actually edits the videos for a side channel of mine called Stream Guides, where we post highlights from streams, clips from streamer news, and everything like that. It is very easy to cut these down into shorts or TikToks because I have a vertical slice of me and a vertical slice of what I'm showing. Meanwhile, the traditional presentation of what I'm doing right now would be a widescreen view of the desktop with me in a little circle or square in the corner. I also just don't like how that looks for a lot of desktop purposes, but it's also much more difficult to cut that into vertical or square-oriented content, whereas these vertical slices are a lot easier to work with in that regard. Just a little tip and thought there. So take into consideration your distribution outlets. Doesn't need to drive every decision you make, but it can definitely help them. Had a question in chat real quick here. Do they sell HDMI 2.1 splitters and switchers? There are not any available yet. However, HD Fury, which is a company that makes some of the best just general video tinkering things, have finally just started pre-orders for their HD Fury, what they're calling the Vroom, which is a 40 gigabits per second HDMI 2.1 device. It will split, it will scale, it will be a matrix and a switch, it will strip HDCP, it will pull out eARC, it will do just about anything you want to your HDMI 2.1 systems. However, it comes at the price. Now, I will say, I have right here, if I can unplug it, because I'm not actually using it at the moment. I have right here their HD Fury Diva that I have picked up recently and used for certain things. This thing is incredible, especially when I combine it with some of the other HD Fury devices. Like this is an older X4 unit, which is from the 1080p 720p days. These things are incredible. So this right here, the Diva, and I think this was $500. This will take your 4K 60 HDMI 2.0 signal, and it will actually take eARC from HDMI 2.1 even, but it's mainly built around HDMI 2.0. This will take your 4K HDR signal, it will tone map it down to SDR and spit it back out. It will downscale it to 1080p or 720p and spit it back out. It will strip out your audio. You can control it all over the network, or there's a big like little LCD screen on the front you can do with it. It acts as a switcher and a matrix. It has other audio outputs that you can get out of it. It can scale 4K down to 1080p or 720p. It can scale up 1080p to 4K. So just as a weird experiment recently, I took the X4, which converts the PlayStation 3's 720p output, upscales it to 1080p, because my BVM doesn't support 1080p, so I had to run it at 720p. But it also stripped the HDCP, ran it out at 1080p to this, which then upscaled it to 4K. So you can do lots of back and forth frame rate and resolution conversions to do whatever you want with it. So these are this is the company that makes the things that kind of like you do whatever you want and have ultimate control over your video signals, but it's not a standard matrix or switch or anything like that. So those are going to be cheaper, but these aren't even coming out before November because of shortages and chip shortages and all of that. And the chipsets for HDMI 2.1 have been insane anyway. We're not going to see normal ones probably until the same time or later, and we're probably not going to see capture cards for it until next year. At least. All right, back on topic. You also need to consider plugins. So there can be a wide variety of plugins or scripts or whatever for OBS that make your life easier, be it. And obviously I have tons of videos coming. I actually have another video on plugins coming next week for workflow things, but there's like I have the downstream keyer from Exceldor running right now, which is how I have the music added to any scene. You've got the now playing stuff. If music is part of a huge part of your stream, you want to have that now playing text probably at least coming up sometimes. Color grading, on screen like hype trains or scoreboards or tournament bracket kind of things. You know, there's unlimited things you can do with plugins, but you may need those ahead of time and installed and set up on things like that because, oh boy. But I have a ton of content on plugins and more coming because there are a ton of cool stuff you can do with it. On top of once you get into with Touch Portal and Lorien board and all sorts of stuff, you can have your stream controlled with channel points or bits or whatever. You can get real wild with it if you want to, but you don't necessarily need to. You also have to consider here how interactive your stream should be, and that should also, again, consider the distribution. If your stream is primarily live and you want a ton of interaction, then you want to go all in on your alerts for your subs. You want to go all in for the channel point redemptions, the bits redemptions, and people interacting and controlling your stream or being represented on your stream at some point. But if you're primarily making a podcast or a teaching show or something that you're planning on really going all in on formatting for another platform like YouTube, most of that stuff doesn't work elsewhere because all that extra interactivity is just kind of spammy or dead air to someone watching on YouTube, unless it turns into a moment. And of course, you can have those moments that you then highlight out as well. But for example, if I'm making a tutorial, I'm going to be fairly quiet with chat and not want a bunch of alerts and things coming up for that part of the tutorial that I then post somewhere else. And then maybe my just chatting or break time scene has all those crazy interactivity elements and you guys can save them up for that. But you really have to consider what you want for that in order to plan it out a little bit better. Then you have the branding, of course. This one's fairly self-explanatory. I don't need to dive into this one too much, but you have, overlays, scene layouts. Keep in mind how they affect your layout for those other platforms. You've got music vibes to consider, all of those kinds of things. And then, of course, there's the distribution workflow, which is how will you get it to other sites? And that will also be its own separate point. Actually, yeah, that should just be its own separate point after you've built the stream. What will your video editing workflow look like? Which we're not necessarily focusing on a ton here because this is about how to build the show, not what to do with it after. So following these instructions, building the stream show. Physical. I can right now identify the limitations that I'm going to run into with the show that I want to run on Twitch right now. First and foremost, second monitor. I have 2 monitors in the setup, but one of them is disconnected because it was put up in a big old tall monitor mount above my BVM here, as it was in the previous plays. But I don't have a video cable that reaches because my current streaming computer for this side of things, even though it's running Threadripper, the graphics card in it is only a 1650 Super. And the 1650 Super only has 3 video outputs, 1 DisplayPort, 1 HDMI, 1 DVI. And so I need to run a DVI cable to this 1440p 120Hz monitor because it's the only monitor I have available to throw here. That's a little jank. I technically have 3 monitors though because I have on my teleprompter here, I have a field monitor that runs my teleprompter, and I also pull chat up so I can see you while chatting and things like that. I will probably need to upgrade that to a 7-inch. It's currently a 5-inch, but for now it's fine. But also consider those things. You may want to invest in a teleprompter. I have a whole episode of AFK Chat on my YouTube channel where we broke down the different teleprompter workflows and what works for different lenses and things like that. Because they can be incredibly important for pulling up your slides. If you're doing PowerPoint slides, you can see the preview of your slides up here while your big one's going to stream. Pulling up your chat to then have chat on your stream, so you're looking at camera when you're talking about chat. Like right now, I'm reading chat while I'm looking at you, instead of being like, oh, hey, chat, yeah, I'm over here reading you and not looking at you. Eye contact is incredibly important. You can have your activity feed, so you always, when you look at the camera, you see who has followed or subbed or done whatever, so you have it in your eyes to identify. Or you can pull up other gameplay elements or whatever you need to. That's an incredible investment you can make. Make sure, of course, the basics, lighting, audio, we already talked about audio, space, we talked about that, and then scene switching and the like. So the big one for me right now that I need to work on is this monitor. I don't think you can see it in this back cam. No, it's off camera here. The monitor is mounted here, and I need to move it here, and we might do this during the stream. But also, a thing that I'm running into, I have kind of a cramped space here because you can kind of see here, my keyboard and mouse are on my Pokemon desk mat opening, and I often keep extra stuff I'm working on in the way, and I don't have a whole lot of like wiggle room. So I need to move this game shelf somewhere else that's sitting next to me, and I need to eventually at some point soon swap out to a wireless keyboard and mouse so I can keep them out of the way or in my lap or even on like a mounted tray here or something to easily interact with. And I've already gotten my Stream Deck over here up off the table mounted with one of those Stream Deck mounts that I have linked from Etsy that I have linked in previous videos. You can find that in my Stream Deck versus Stream Deck 2 review. I can go grab that if you would like. I will drop them. They're pretty cool 3D printed little Stream Deck mounts. They're super handy. From my buddy AD Wheeler. Copy link. That is a terrible link. Go with this one instead. Would a trackball mouse work better? Other than the fact that I can't use one because I've never used one, and that muscle memory breaking thing would just be more of a problem anyway. And I don't want it to be in the same place because then to keep it out of the way, I'd be like reaching way across here just to awkwardly stroke my thumb, whereas I just need a mouse that I can keep out of the way and put on my mat when I need it and then easily keep out of the way. God, my nose. So those are the 2 things that I need to work on physically right now, on top of a chair. I'm adding that to my list. I need a better chair for this setup. I talked about this last stream, but I had one that was supposed to be coming in when I moved, and then it no longer worked out, and so I'm stuck here with a stool. And it works for my Pokemon openings, because half the time I'm like standing up for those anyway. But for these streams, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. I also have a fan here that I need to mount a little, USB powered silent fan that keeps me cooler. Then I need to mount a little bit off the surface of the table. I need better organization for my Pokemon cards. Because often after streams, they just get left all over the desk because I don't have anywhere immediately to put them, like to keep them out of the way. I need a solution for that. So those are the physical things I need to work on before this stream launches, or this show launches in August. Now, that was the physical. For the digital, for OBS, I need a couple things. I need just chatting scenes. I need updated alerts. I need specific scenes. So actually, I'll take just chatting scenes out here for a sec, because we'll come back to that in branding. Just chatting, unboxing, screen capture. What else do we need? Let's look back at our show titles to figure that out. We've got, excuse me, we've got our show idea. So stream critique. So I need screen capture for the stream critique. We need media sources for the app showcase / screen capture for that as well. Possibly mobile capture, probably via NDI. I don't have a scene set up for that. Q&A, just chatting. We have a just chatting scene, and then gameplay scene. Gameplay scene works out there as well. We already have the Pokemon scenes established because we already have that set up. Things like that. So then for that, we need new branding things as well because I don't have some of these set up. So for branding, for example, I need a chat box. I probably need some slightly updated alerts, or I'm probably moving alert services off of Streamlabs, maybe to Stream Elements or something. But, you know, not that. We've got music already lined out, but I need to set up now playing lower thirds. If I want to have guests on or anything, I need an interview scene and interview graphics. I need general lower thirds, stingers, and I need to work out with that in OBS. I need transition tables set up. We got two more gifted, we got one more gifted sub from Kadessa and a prime sub from Warren Bishop. Thank you so much for all the subs. Much appreciated. I'm trying to think. That may be all we need for now, because everything else is kind of established. Eventually, long term, I need to pretty up my badges. Vin, better watch out, your boy. Epos is gunning for you. LOL! Going back to physical for a sec, I do want... that's been on my to-do list in general for the studio is smart control over studio lights and stuff, because I can get you all to interact with them as well at some point. I am using a 1/4 Pro Mist. I use them on pretty much every camera shot I use these days. Helps with the whole neon aesthetic, because otherwise this does not look quite as great with digital cameras. Perfect, and it helps smooth out the skin. And yes, I need more sub emotes, actually. Good job calling that out. Thank you. Sub emotes. So that is the general plan. So the show that I'm going to make here on Twitter is a tech show. We don't have a name yet. You all can submit name in chat, but you know, whatever. We're making a tech show that's mostly going to be just chatting, but we might pop into science and technology. It's going to be something that I can reformat segments for YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok, and along with that, YouTube Shorts. The main segment is probably going to be stream critique, but we're also going to have smaller segments for Tweak Zone, which are That's a code name at the moment. But basically, basic unboxings and first impressions, as well as general testing and tweaking of things. And then an app or tool showcase of some sort, which kind of falls in a similar line, but one of that's kind of more physical or experimental, whereas one is more digital and just a list kind of thing. And then we'll have Q&A/tech support sprinkled in throughout, and an after party. This isn't necessarily the order, but an after party that results in me getting to open up Pokemon cards or playing gameplay. Now, two other things now that I'm going through this that I will also need in terms of OBS is comment highlight and QE up questions, as Cujo pointed out for that one, which will count as comment highlight, as we see in our list here. We got 13 Death Jester with the Prime Sub! Hype Train! Valverick with the Prime Sub! Choo-choo! And for branding, we need a Hype Train. Thank you so much, everyone. Much appreciated. So this is the general idea of the show that I'm going to produce on Twitch starting in August. And frankly, this is quite a bit more planned out than AFK Chat was. So I think it's going to be a little bit more successful. But going back to our original objectives, this is a show that I can package into a 1 or 2 hour live stream here on Twitch. I can interact with you all, involve you all in the show, especially in between segments, but also during it. I can get a full stream critique episode for YouTube out of it, edited down from the stream, and it'll have interactive elements. You all can give feedback or vote on things on top of the planned out thoughts that I have on the stream, as well as some winged thoughts on, that I come up with on the fly, because that's how a lot of the stuff goes. I also have an app/tool showcase segment that I can then edit down for YouTube, but also, if I don't feel like it makes a good dedicated YouTube video on its own, each of those individual tools or apps or whatever that I showcase and talk about can become a TikTok video as well as a YouTube short. The tweak zone, for the most part, will be relegated. Well, also, stream critique can be highlighted out to be a Twitter highlight that just promotes the video. The app tool showcase can be reposted to Twitter as well. Pretty much anything going to TikTok or YouTube Shorts can also go on Twitter. The tweak zone, the unboxing first impressions parts, will just go on my side channel, the Stream Guides channel, as well as the general testing and tweaking, unless it's a big, something really happens that I think deserves to go on to main. But that feeds content into my second channel, and if it happens to be short enough, it can go to a short or TikTok, but that's less likely. Then we'll have the Q&A just chatting segment, which, if there's significant questions that I need to highlight or talk about more, those can become Twitter videos as well as TikToks or YouTube Shorts on either the main or secondary channel. And then we have the after party gameplay stuff, which is just hanging out with you all and playing the games and the Pokemon card openings, which could be edited down to go on my dedicated Pokemon channel, HoloQuest, which I had started and then been unable to keep up with. So if I get an editor for that or something, that's also feeding content there. So we are feeding content to so many different places from what is effectively a 1 to 2 hour live show. And this is how you plan it out and make it happen. This was a 2 hour live stream to tell you about all that, because this is all the kinds of work that go into it. For a question that I mostly get asked over on TikTok, where they expect me to answer in 60 seconds or less. But this is how you do it, and this is the strategy that I employ and the strategy that someone like Ludwig uses effectively to plan out his gameplay shows, which then turn into daily YouTube videos as well. I hope this makes sense for everyone. If you have any questions, of course, that's what chat is for. We are going to start tweaking the set here a little bit as we go. And hopefully get this hype train still going. There's only 1 minute, 30 seconds left. What are you waiting for? Is this the kind of time of day you think you'll stream? So this is really tough and not something I have identified yet. Actually, I want to go in real quick. You're welcome, Smooth Nanners. Under scenes, I also want dedicated TikTok scenes. And actually, the comment highlight thing does not go in specific scenes. That's just a dedicated OBS thing. So I have this camera, 100 bits from DJ U-Turn. So I have this scene right here with this side camera angle. This used to be a horizontal camera, so you can see the cool lights in my desk setup back there. I have since flipped it vertical because with my SM7B mounted in the middle here, I can actually use this to film my TikToks moving forwards. Because the audio on my iPhone is garbage. It often clips and peaks out like crazy, and it just doesn't produce the results I want, whereas I'm very happy overall with the image I get out of this camera. I'm going to slap another filter on it and adjust the angle a little bit here. But overall, I think this is a great vertical video view with high quality audio, decent lighting, and still shows cool lights in the background, while I can still cut TikTok from my normal camera views and the like. If I want to sit down and record a response to something, I can do it right here. But I want to utilize the rest of the space in the scene right here, all this black space. And so I need to come up with ideas such as adding in chat in the middle and adding other elements on screen and things like that to turn it into its weird kind of just chatting scene of its own here that I think would be pretty cool. Hype Train level 1 success. Thank you. 4 subs, 100 bits. Much appreciated. Excuse me. So that's another scene that I need to build out and plan out as well. Now there is extra stuff that I can, integrate here. I can set up cameras and stuff so I can stream next-gen consoles once we have the HD Fury device in here from that side of the TV and just have it fed back over here. And I can also figure out a way to smoothly transition to my PC game streaming setup over in the main desk and the main desk streaming setup. I've got a lot of logistics to figure out with actually streaming from multiple streaming setups at the same time. But that's long-term and not relevant necessarily to this immediate show that I am planning. If we want to get more granular, I do have other ideas for specific graphics I need. So for example, I need announcement pages, such as for game night and upcoming episodes and things like that. Dedicated scenes could be BRB with video previews or TikToks. Things like that. Just as some final idea generations here, generating things here. So we do have an unboxing today just because this arrived today. And I haven't had time to mess with it yet. We were going to the park when it showed up. So I have a couple products I want to show off just to talk about. But feel free to throw whatever questions you may have in the chat. I am unfortunately out of water. So that sucks. We will be wrapping up the stream soon. I will potentially be jumping on Apex Legends, but I still don't have my PC gaming streaming set up, so I can't really stream that just yet. But we do have one unboxing and one other product I want to talk about. Product number, or unboxing here. This is a package from PreSonus. Really cool company. So switch to overhead view here. Let's focus our camera. Let's do it down here. You can start to see my complaints about it being cramped in this setup. So this is a fairly big box. So of course that requires a big knife. This is their, this is their brand new Revelator IO24 audio interface. It's a USB audio interface. It has a loopback mixer and it has effects on board. So this has 2 XLR inputs on the front. You've got controls for both of those as well as an LCD indicator for that, a dial knob, a mute button. On the back you have MIDI in and out. Speakers! Elgato speakers in and output. Also, I realize you all are getting the dark and muty version. I do need a button added to my Stream Deck as well for this ring light setup soon. There we go. You get MIDI in and out. You get speakers, main, right and left, in and out, analog output, 1/4 inch. You get a 1/4 inch headphone jack. You get USB Type-C. It is probably still USB 2.0. but it is USB Type-C. And then it comes with Studio One Artist Edition, which is in Spanish, German, and French. Huh? Oh, here we go. Easily add sound effects, Skype interviews, and more. It is unclear if these are running on a DSP on board on the interface or if it is just CPU processing. Either way, the software being integrated with the interface is huge. You get X-Max L microphone preamps. I have no idea the quality of them. Supposedly, it can run a SM7B, but also I will be reviewing the PreSonus PD70 as well. Let's get this opened up here. Get USB Type-C cable. Paperwork underneath. This could become my new audio interface combined with my mixer to allow me to still get all my audio routing needs that the GoXLR serves, because I have a mixer that has the virtual audio cables that GoXLR has, and then just use this for my microphone effects if I like the post-processing it does very much. This is very sleek looking, very clean. I love the presentation here. Super professional. It is PreSonus, of course. It has a tiny ass LCD though. Big old rubber feet on the bottom. Keep it from sliding. Vents on the side and back. You get a Kensington lock as well. Again, USB Type-C. Analog outputs. We already covered that. Dial is clicky and turny. These are kind of mushy buttons. Not that it really matters. So this is one of those things that, like I said, I can't really test live because plugging this in and trying to get the software going while I'm streaming. If you have any experience with audio hardware, you know that is a hard time or a bad time or whatever. But yeah, that is the main unboxing. I'm going to go grab one more product here that I want to talk about that will also probably make for another video, but I'm not 100% certain yet. We'll switch to the back view here. Yes, I still have all the Pokemon card wrappers in the floor from last stream because I'm waiting on... I have to scrub out my garbage can, as stupid as that sounds. So I actually have two things to show here. So, first and foremost is this bad boy. Although this is not a good one, unfortunately. This is the Canon 514 XLS. This is a Super 8 8mm camcorder that shoots on Super 8 8mm film. It's not in the best of condition, but it was supposed to be working, but it was super cheap because it was untested, but working last time they tested it. Unfortunately, the issue that I'm running into is I believe it looks like there's evidence that the previous batteries that were in this at some point, they weren't shipped to me that way, but that were in the battery grip, corroded at some point because there's some of that blue gunk around the base. It looks like they attempted to clean it up a little bit, but I have AA's in here right now and cannot get it to power on. And I bought a 9-volt power supply, but I don't have one that works with the, I don't have the specific size barrel jack that this one requires. So I have ordered from Etsy, was the only place, weirdly enough, that I found it. I've ordered the battery pack, and otherwise I have a bid going on a more expensive listing for a confirmed working unit. And once I get it working, I will order. There are services where you can buy effectively the film and the scanning process all together, even scanning up to 8 or 6K, which is going to be wild. I'm going to start shooting some 8mm film. I'm very excited. I also shoot a lot of film photography. And so since I want to experiment a little bit more with pushing and pulling film in the light, I finally invested in a light meter. This is the Sekonic L308XU, which is a ridiculous name. But this right here is a light meter. So you turn it on, it detects the light that is currently being cast on it, and then gives you effectively the correct camera settings to use in this environment. Thank you for the tier 1 sub, Smooth Nanners. So for example, in this current mode, I hold down ISO and then adjust the ISO that I am shooting at for film. So for example, 400 ISO film, or I'm going to knock it down to 320 so I can overexpose the film a little bit. And then I adjust from here the shutter speed that I want to shoot at, which for photos, I can crank up to whatever, and it tells me the f-stop that I need to be shooting at, which I realize this is hard to see. Or if I'm shooting video, then it is 1/60 for 30 FPS, or 1/50 for... you don't get 50 here, but 1/60 also counts for 24 FPS. And then I hold this down, it takes in the light, and it tells me the ideal aperture to be shooting at, which under all of this light, for ISO 320, 1/60 shutter speed, f2.0 to 2.1 is the ideal aperture to shoot at. Alternatively, we can hit mode a little bit and kind of switch these around. So I can adjust the aperture that I'm already shooting at. So I can say if I'm shooting at f2, what shutter speed should I use to get proper exposure? 1/60. I realize the screen's really hard to see, but that's the general idea behind this. Is it gives you mostly correct like exposure settings for a given camera, which is really useful for film where you don't get to see the results in real time if it works out. For digital, you can just kind of chimp your camera and figure out if you're doing it right or adjust it in post. Film, you do have a lot of latitude to, if you overexpose, to bring back down. Like you have a few stops you can work with, but if you underexpose with film, you often can't recover it quite as much. So especially for the 8mm film camera, where that's a little bit more expensive than the rolls of 35mm photo film I have, I thought it was a worthwhile investment, and it will help me get settings right a little bit easier just with normal digital video shoots as well. That nail polish is fantastic. It looks close to blacklight reflective. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for when I found it. I thought it looked really like that kind of, the pink and the green that you see. Looked great. But yeah, I think that's about all I have for you all today. We planned out entirely how to build a show for Twitch, or for how to build a live stream show that you can then turn into form that not only keeps viewers around and keeps them coming back at the same time, but also is easy to turn into different content. And I just realized I didn't answer Lance's question about the time of day that I stream. That is really complicated for me. It's most likely still going to be 3 p.m. Eastern. That seems to be the best time that we have worked out with the baby and my wife taking over for him while we're doing stuff. That seems to be the best time. So whatever day of week I pick, it may be 3 p.m. But I could do it at night like this. My viewership is going to be less at night like this. And it's kind of less reliable because I have to keep the baby monitor on and keep an ear out in case the baby wakes up. And if so, then I kind of have to interrupt my stream here. But, you know. Yeah, Super 8 is smaller than 35mm. Full frame is 35mm, which is what I would take with my picture-taking camera. Whereas Super 8 is 8mm, which is cropped in by a factor of 4 times, I want to say. Because Super 35 is misleading. It's 1.5x crop. Micro Four Thirds is 2x crop, which is roughly 16mm. Super 16 and Super 8 is half of that. So I believe it's a 4x crop on 35mm. I don't know if that's accurate. All men know is eat hot chip and lie. I don't eat any hot chips, so you know. But yeah, I'm super stoked to be shooting film video. I've done film photography for quite a while. But I've been super scared of video because it's expensive. If I mess up a roll of film pictures, I don't miss a whole lot. And usually I can take a digital camera with me and get the same pictures. Like it doesn't feel as high stakes as doing film video, where ideally like that is the video I'm shooting for whatever project I get, and it get messed up and cost me a couple $100 and not be there. Cause it's like a couple $100 for a 2.5 minute roll at 18 frames per second, or like a minute and a half or a minute and 3/4 at 24 frames per second, I believe. So yeah. Also, it's cool that that light meter has the different modes I can choose between. Because with this camera right here, I don't actually get to choose my shutter speed, I don't believe. I don't recall that being the settings. I get the frame rate, and I think the shutter speed is just stuck to 180 degrees based on the frame rate, or either just a locked shutter speed in general. And then I do get some degree of aperture control over the lens. And that's what I would expose based on. I say practice a lot on photos before doing video. Yeah. Sorry if I missed it, but are there plans for backing track remixes with stems? So, Isorb, who runs the main project, has done some extended loop versions of some of the songs for me to use in videos. Since he produced it, like he has access to all the project files and stuff, and he has done extended versions, which I do want to release on their own album at some point. Just extended like 5-minute cuts. But otherwise, we're just kind of releasing the stems in case anyone else wants to do remixes. I don't know that we necessarily have plans to do it immediately. We may revisit some of the stuff at some point for it, but not currently. We don't have plans for it. I will propose it, though. But the frame rate can be an issue on some Super 8 cameras, so get that sorted out. What do you mean, an issue in what way? Like, it can't keep up? I've heard that with, like, power issues. Like, it can't power it to spin it fast enough. I'm nervous because I want the full runtime, like, especially because I think at some point I want to do a full project where I, like, shoot an entire video on Super 8. It has to be something that isn't time sensitive, of course. But since I only have 2.5 minutes per tape, or per roll or whatever, I want to, like, use the full length so I can get as much runtime as possible, because it's probably going to take a few rolls, or tapes, or reels, or whatever. But 18 frames per second is pretty slow. And I could optical flow or otherwise interpolate it up to 24 or 30. It still won't look amazing. Whereas 24 native, ow, that really freaking hurt. 24 native is a little bit easier to work with. So I'm not sure yet in that regard. Just want to say you're awesome for introducing me to Indie Eye. It's a bitch to get set up every time, but I'm glad I know it exists. Hell yeah, actually. They just released Indie Eye 5. I haven't gotten a chance to cover this yet. Indie Eye 5 is a huge new release with updates to the apps as well as over the internet stuff. So I've always answered questions about, can you use Indie Eye over the internet? No. And SRT, Secure Reliable Transport, has showed up to fill that gap. But with Indie Eye 5, they have introduced new apps for over the internet stuff. So you can connect different buildings and guests and things like that. Why does this just play a video? I had a page pulled up with the updates to it. What's the new stuff? Yeah, Indie Eye Remote, Indie Eye Bridge, and Indie Eye, also a dedicated audio Indie Eye tool. So, yeah. So, learning your camera really is a journey. You're going to be spending a bunch just learning the ins and outs. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Especially because to do like A-roll for a video, unless I do it selfie style, which I'm pretty sure this lens is wide angle enough that I could just like vlog with it. I'm basically going to have to have my wife sit in for me to lock focus, and then have my wife be the one pulling the trigger for the video. So that's going to be weird. But I want to use it for making an actual video just to push it to its limits. That'll be the one that I get scanned in at 6K and stuff. And just to see what I can do with the full high resolution open gate and everything. But then also I just want to use it for fun, like travel stuff in a little bit. I know that seems really dumb, but I love the more analog stuff. Like, I'm far more likely to take my Minolta film camera with me when I go photography taking than my digital camera, especially because it's so much lighter than my 16 Mark II. 6D Mark II. Who just does a live stream with it? So there are a couple projects for like hooking it up to a camera sensor or a Raspberry Pi or something to stream with it. The issue is, like, I love the idea of projects like that, but when you have a camera like this, which has no sensor about it. So actually, one moment, let me grab something, because I do have a project I am working on somewhat relevant to that. I have a couple VHS cameras like this. A couple different VHS cameras, which have a full... Oh, it has a spider web on it now because it's been sitting by my front door. But it has a full VHS deck on it. This one in particular doesn't actually work. It works for video out, but it doesn't write to tape, which gave me this idea. But I bought these last year or the year before. You've seen them in like my intro video to streamer news and things like that. But I have these cameras which have a CCD sensor in them and output composite video. I am making a video where I'm going to implement them into my streaming setup here in the studio just to have them as tertiary cameras for that retro look. But that's because it has a digital sensor in it that it's then writing to the VHS tape. Whereas a film camera has no sensor. It is exposing the lens onto the film. There's no intermediate image interpreter between the lens and the film. And so to use this for streaming, you have to put any other camera sensor or image taking device behind the lens, at which point the only streaming with characteristic you're getting out of this is just the lens itself, which theoretically you could somehow detach and mount on a normal camera lens adapter versus getting the entire characteristic of the camera. So unfortunately, that's not as exciting as it may sound on the surface. Before filming A-roll, go out and just waste the roll, tons of notes with the light meter, and yeah, of course. I mean, that's the fun thing about the Super 8 for the most part, other than figuring out where the exposure goes. The fun thing is unlike my film, like, photo camera, I don't have, I mean, that's kind of what I was talking about, is I don't have any settings to actually adjust. Shutter's locked to 180, and ISO is determined by film, so then I'm just exposing based on the aperture, which admittedly, at this moment in time, I haven't figured out accurately how to change, or either it doesn't change because it's powered off. Because this is the focus, I believe. No, this is the zoom. This is the focus. I see in the viewfinder what I thought was an aperture indicator, and it has now changed since last I looked at it. But I don't actually know where that is to change. Because now it says 32, which I believe is f32, whereas before it said 1.4. So it's somewhere here. But I don't see the blades turning whenever I do anything, the actual iris blades. So I will have to figure that out. You know, that's the big thing I have to figure out. What does it say on the lens? I mean, it's a f1.4 maximum. It also came with this cool skylight filter that I'm curious what effect it actually has. Oh wait, is that the iris? No, that's definitely the zoom. I've got zoom, I've got macro mode, I've got focus. I just don't see an extra dial like I would normally have on a lens for aperture. I've only got focus distance markers and zoom distance markers. I don't have the aperture markers anywhere. But clearly it has adjusted at some point, so I will need to figure that out. And again, I have batteries in it and can't get it to turn on. Well, it says S, but the motor doesn't pull when I pull it. I'm pretty sure the terminals at the bottom of the handle are corroded, and there's no way to really take this handle apart to like there's no screws to unscrew it, to actually take it apart to try to clean those terminals. So I think I'm kind of screwed unless I just happen to like get the batteries rubbed up against them to clean off the corrosion. Wait, what? When I squeeze the trigger, it changes the aperture. When I squeeze it, it goes back to 1.4. Okay, now it dropped to 3. Wait, it's on auto exposure. That's why. It changes based on what I'm pointing it at. Okay, I knew. So that's a setting somewhere. Like you said, figure it out as we go. Wait, that means the battery's working, right? Maybe it's not dead. If the audio exposure is working, that means the batteries are working, right? So maybe it's just not pulling the motor because it knows there's not a tape in there? Have I been wrong this whole time? There's probably like a detection mechanism to know there's a tape in it. I have no way of knowing the motor works now if I don't... I thought the batteries weren't working this whole time. I had no idea it had auto exposure. I don't see an option for auto exposure. I have an EE lock option, but it's not like a lock in place thing. Amazing. The stream just got wild. I discovered something that was not, or I thought was not broken. So yeah, I'm going to order some tape now. I missed that PreSonus thing. Can I ask you to do some tests when you review it for me? Check if it adds CPU usage, audio latency. Yeah, I mean, those are mostly what I would be testing anyway. So yeah, that means I can add or go ahead and order some tape tonight, or film. I'm stoked! Alright guys, I'm gonna wrap it up for today. I'm gonna go play some Apex or Halo with the boys, I hope, if they're still around. Thank you so much for hanging out in today's 2.5-hour stream. It's been wild. This will be edited up in a video or two on how to plan a show for your stream if you missed it, up on the YouTube channel. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for, I think we gained like 10 more subs today. So heck yeah, let's keep that rolling. And stay tuned for my August starting show here on Twitch. I'm excited. See you in the next one.